evening, hello and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of the Rapid Drivers Club at 2.4 World Tour Season 2 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available on PC and next generation consoles known as Assetto Corsa Competizione, and of course we are using the PC version of the sim, and this series is sponsored by Wild Things Racing. It is the case this is a series which tests our drivers from start to finish, whether it be in the Fast and Furious qualifying session or indeed the need to endure the 2.4 hours of racing that follows qualifying. But tonight, with round number 2 out of 6, it is the case that we have another round of exciting racing action that lies in wait, and well, we are only moments away from heading to the circuit. But our schedule for tonight, times in British summertime, that's BST or UTC +1, are as follows. It is the case that in approximately what will be 9 minutes time, we'll be making our way into the qualifying session. 20 minutes as split into 2 equal halves for our BMW M2 CS class drivers, followed up by GT3 class drivers, and that will set the grid for the purposes of our one and only race today, which will kick off at approximately 25 to 8 this evening, and that will be our 144-minute race, of course, our 2.4-hour race, start to finish, with an all-important pit stop thrown into the mix as well, and we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out in practice. After which we'll be conducting post-race interviews with our race winners within each of their respective classes. That's both within the GT3 class and also within the BMW M2 CS class. Now, as for the broadcast, it is the case that this broadcast is being brought to you live via 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. It is firstly the case that if you're more of a YouTube person, you can go to youtube.com, search for TX141TX or Paul Walsh, and you can tune in there. Or alternatively, if you're more of a Twitch person, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX141 and you can tune in on Twitch. And who is Paul Walsh? Who is TX141? Well, that is I, your host and commentator for this series. My name is Paul Walsh, TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your race and action today, indeed for the rest of the season. And well, the big question is, of course, who am I? We go to who are Wild Things Racing, our sponsor for the series, and it's only appropriate we do introduce them. Well, Wild Things Racing, in short, are a professional sim racing team as founded and owned by Denise Pope, which competes in both sprint and endurance series on Assetto Corsa Competizione at the Pro, Silver and AM levels. And if you would like to know more about Wild Things Racing, be sure to head to their official Twitter page today for further information. And that is twitter.com/Wild Things Race. And they're not just a sponsor for the series, but they're also helping in the background with regards to organising the races and also helping out with the broadcast. So right there, and Denise Pope being right at the core of Wild Things Racing, lovely lady to work with, and indeed bringing together an absolutely brilliant team of drivers, and you'll see plenty of them taking to the tarmac today. And speaking of today, let's talk about today in the context of the wider calendar. It is the case, of course, last time out 2 weeks ago, we kicked off for round number 1 on the 17th of August in Belgium in Spa Francorchamps, and what a round that was. Running at night, it was the case. We saw plenty of battling up and down the field, a relatively quiet by comparison BMW M2 class, whereas the GT3s were all in, all out, all the way through. But it was the case that Lehtinen in the end taking the win in the GT3 class, and the Sim Racing Collective team taking the win in the BMW M2 class, and indeed 2 very different stories there in terms of the way they got into the lead of the race, but both drivers or teams dominating come the finish. And the question will be, can they keep up appearances tonight as we make our way into round number 2 at Donington Park? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the United Kingdom. It is the 31st of August today, and we are going racing for the one and only time planned on the schedule, that is, in the United Kingdom. But we'll come back to why I say planned very shortly. After today, we'll be making our way across the Atlantic to the American circuit of Watkins Glen in the state of New York for round number 3. Newly arrived, of course, with the latest downloadable content on Assetto Corsa Competizione available on PC, and we'll be there on the 14th of September. After which, for the penultimate round, we stay in the United States of America, but we make our way to the Circuit of the Americas, or COTA as it's known, for the 28th of September. And a very different circuit, that one, compared to the 3 opening circuits, in the fact that it has a whole multitude of different sectors there. A very technical opening sector before the circuit really does open up, before it returns more of a technical final sector, and we'll have to wait and see how our drivers get on at COTA in the penultimate round. And then for the final round, where it is the case earlier, you remember I said it is the case we've only planned to visit the United Kingdom once, and we only plan to visit the United States twice, and Belgium once. Could we potentially see a revisit to one of those countries, and indeed to a circuit which we've already been to, or a whole new circuit, in the fact that it will be a random track selected for the final round on the 12th of October 2022, and it's my understanding that circuit will be announced a week from when we go racing. Racing. So by the 5th of October, we should have an idea of what circuit that is going to be, but that means our drivers get less practice time, and that always throws an additional conundrum into the mix, and the fact they won't know the final round until they're about to go into it, and well, that just makes things ever more exciting. But of course, today we're at Donington Park. But before we talk a little bit more about our circuit specifically, we should talk about our championship standings after the opening round, and we start off, of course, with the GT3 class standings. Now, it is the case in the top 10 here. You can see Lehtinen Racing leading on 75 points there after taking the win at Spa Francorchamps in a brilliant back and forth between Lehtinen Racing and Wildthings Racing's Sedaka Driver Academy division. It was the case that we were expecting the Sedaka Driver Academy to be leading all the way to the end, but through strategy, it was the case that Lehtinen Racing took the lead with a much quicker stop by comparison and redeployed the pace in the Honda NSX Evo GT3 versus the Audi R8 LMS Evo 2. We're expecting those two teams to go toe-to-toe tonight, but let's not count out Wildthings Racing's Hackz division there in P3 in the Porsche 991 Mark II, and on top of that as well, Random Racing in P4. They're really the best of the rest in terms of the racing that we saw at Spa Francorchamps in the GT3s, but we can see also their Wildthings Racing's Daz division there in P5, and well, the Audi driver there looking to get a little bit closer to that top three. As we continue to make our way down the top 10, Team Schumi Skins there in P6. A difficult day for Schumi Skins, it has to be said. They were on course to potentially bring home a top 5, but it was a major incident coming out of Blanchimont which completely upset the apple cart. But we look forward to seeing how the Porsche Works team gets back to work today, and keep your eyes on them. They could be on for leading pace. Then we have AMR Daniel Sim Racing, or Aston Martin Racing, Daniel Sim Racing there. A very good effort from the Aston Martin Racing driver, and we do look forward to seeing how they get on in P7. Again, that P7 not necessarily representative of the pace they had, given they did have top 3 pace, but a major incident caused an upset and caused them to lose some major points. And then we do have Wildthings Racing's Colex GG team in P8, followed by Option 13 and Slow Racing Car team completing the top 10. But it's not just about the top 10 as we look from P11 to P20, with the fact we can see the Astro Racing team, the best of the rest outside the top 10, and they'll be looking to try and advance their campaign tonight. But as we continue to make our way down, Team Vispa in P15 as well, in the Bentley Continental GT3 2018 machine, a team which did very well in terms of the race pace. Qualifying didn't quite work out for Vispa by comparison, and we'll be keeping our eyes on them because if they can hook up qualifying here, they could be on for a top 10 finish and definitely building that points tally. And not safe for wings as well in P17, the BMW M4 team on 26 points. They've got plenty to look forward to here at Donington Park, and we do believe the M4 goes quite strongly at this circuit, so keep your eyes out for their BMW. But outside the top 20 in at P21 there, we do have Dirty Pedals in the McLaren 720S GT3 as we look from 21st to 30th. And Dirty Pedals, one of those teams which really lost out at Spa Francorchamps, involved in a good number of incidents, if I remember correctly. Not many of them by their own cause. It was the case, and then really becoming the victim of a number of circumstances. And that P21 position is not representative of where they want to be. So watch out for them. They'll definitely be trying to charge as rapidly as possible. We can also see their SS Racing in P24, Simon Still Racing. It is the case in the Honda NSX having a difficult day at the office and looking to bounce back here at Donington. And we can note there in P25, Wildthings Racing's Love Pope team, of course Denise Pope behind the wheel, switching from the Nissan GTR as part of the season opener to the McLaren 720S GT3. So as a result, suffering a 14-point penalty there and deciding to go with the sacrifice to a much more comfortable car potentially, and we can expect that McLaren to be flying around Donington. But then we do see their Quantum Racing team in P30 in the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage. We look forward to seeing how their number 7 driver gets on at the circuit. Or Team 7, I should say, rather than number 7 driver. But as we then look outside the top 30, it is the case we see Dutch Endurance team, Climax Racing, Quantum Racing team in the BMW, Hard Attack and PJ team complete the championship standings for our GT3s. But as for our BMW M2 class by comparison, well, as we said earlier, it was the case that last time out, the Sim Racing Collective started this season as they left off in Season 1, which was in absolutely dominant form, just running away from the field from the start of the race and really just manage it to perfection. And we're expecting plenty more from them tonight. But of course, with Donington being a circuit that's more favourable to touring class racing, we could imagine that TSRC may have their hands full in dealing with Half Practice Hero and Rapid Drivers Club Slowpokes there, P2, P3 respectively. We have Rev Finland there in P4 ahead of Wildthings Racing's HFG team, and then outside the top 5 we have the other TSRC machine, the number 199 car, followed up by Fresh Sim Racing, Alert MS, Blacksmith Racing and Quantum Racing teams to complete the top 10. And then just outside the top 10 it is the case we have On Course Motors followed by Podium Sim Racing and Dark EcoFlex completing the standings. Now, as for our circuit for today, we are of course in Leicestershire in England, the United Kingdom, for the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. The circuit map here provided to us by simracingwiki.com. Thank you to them as always for their brilliant circuit maps. And well, what's there to know about this circuit in particular? We can see from the diagram that this circuit is a very fast sweeping circuit. Out of the 12 corners, it is the case the first 8 corners are all about medium to low speed apexes and trail braking into those apexes as aggressively as possible. It is the case around here that our drivers will be looking to carry as much speed from corner to corner in order to maximise their lap time. And we also have a number of blind apex as well, where the apex is either so late it's hidden from the driver's perspective, alternatively the undulations in the road, which you can't see from a 2D map here, will be hiding that apex. For example, the run down through the craner curves of turns 2 and 3, into the old hairpin at turn 4, and of course the blind summit apex of Coppice at turn number 8. But after that they have the run through the chicane of the S's at turns 9 and 10, which leads on to the GP section of the 2 hairpins Melbourne, followed by Goddard's to complete the lap, and then they'll start it all over again. Now, just a quick reiteration of our rules as we get ready to go into qualifying. It is the case that in general, the balance of performance used for this series is the 2021 variant as available in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Teams entering this series can consist of 1 or more drivers, and teams with more than 1 driver may switch drivers between rounds, so don't be surprised if you see some new names today, and teams can register up to 2 drivers for a given round. In qualifying, we'll be seeing that our BMW M2 class will go out on the circuit first, and then the second half will be dedicated to GT3 class, so it's a 10-minute split each way, and drivers are permitted to use return to garage over the course of qualifying. And as for the race, there is 1 mandatory pit stop, which will require fuel to be added and tyres to be changed. But the key thing is there is no defined pit window, so we can expect plenty of undercuts or attempts at undercuts from our drivers or overcuts from others. And for teams consisting of 2 registered drivers, there is no maximum driver stint time. The team must swap drivers at some point, but they do not have to have a defined window in which they are allowed to have 1 driver out in the car at a given point. So they can run for 60 minutes, they can run for 2 hours, but they must switch at some point, as otherwise they'll pick up a post-race penalty if that driver swap does not occur. But it is the case that we swap from rules and regulations to the circuit, and well, as we look circuit side here, qualifying is about to start, and well, absolutely packed down in the paddock, it must be said, as we see at Lehtinen here, Sakari Lehtinen just parked in his car right now, not allowed to go out there. I can tell you one driver who is allowed to go out there, and that is Just Lune, who is making his way out of the pit lane, the half-practice hero. And as our cameraman decides to spin the camera around, Lune makes his way out of his pit box and heading on towards the circuit. And indeed, the first half of this session dedicated to our BMW M2 CS racing drivers, and as they make the way on out here, who will come out on top. Now, we are expected to be quite close between our BMWs here, given the fact that Donington is a circuit that you'll typically see on a touring car calendar, including the British Touring Car Championship for 2022, where they, of course, went to the national variant of the circuit. We're running the full Grand Prix layout, so we do have the extra corners here, particularly those rather tricky hairpins towards the end of the lap, but as we do see Luna making his way up through the old hairpin here, it is the case that our drivers will need to look to master the art of carrying the speed between corner to corner, and that's something which can be quite difficult in these bulky BMW M2s, as whilst the car doesn't have too much downforce on it and therefore it's more mechanical grip, it is the case that these are cars as well which there's not much to really change on them, so it's about mastering the art of moving that weight around in the car and just simply keeping it on the circuit and keeping the speed with it, as we see Nathan Berry making his way out of Coppice and down towards the S's for the first time on his warm-up lap here, and he heads on through into the chicane and tries to straight line between the 2 apexes here as much as possible. But the real story around here at Donington Park, we can see it's a wide circuit, a lot of space in terms of the width of the track, and that means we're going to see plenty of potential overtakes, whether it's into the heavy braking zones or the trail braking zones, and therefore whether it's in the BMW M2s or the GT3s, you can expect action will be at every corner. Indeed, much like the British GT Championship, which of course has a round here in recent years, it is the case we can expect plenty of fighting. But I can tell you one thing right now, talking about fighting, it will be the case that Nathan Berry goes on to his first flying lap, and indeed the first flying lap of this qualifying session, and let's take you around Donington Park. So making his way up towards turn number 1 here, up into Redgate corner, and as he looks at his brake marker there, just when the pit lane exit appears, it is the case of getting onto the brakes and going through the right hand there, missed the apex slightly, but now carries the speed down through the craner curves, through the right hander, and imagine you're the driver here, you've got no visibility of the turn 3 apex, the left hander, and then there it is. It is the case that apex hidden by the undulations, and now braking his way into the old hairpin here at turn number 4, braking about 50 metres from the corner and just trail braking his way into the right hander. We'll get him back on the throttle throttle, now charging through the left-hander here and heading all the way up through turns 5, through 6 very shortly, the next left-hander before braking into McLean's corner at turn number 7. A late braking point here, you have to brake as late as possible because that apex is so deep into the corner, and as he exits out, now charging up the hill towards Coppice. Where's the right-hand corner, you may be asking? There it is, as you get to the top of the summit, then you see the apex, but you've got to brake before you see the summit effectively, or just as you're about to see it, you've got to believe the corner's there. And as Berry now makes his way out of turn number 8, down the back straight, heading up towards the S's here, now he'll be looking for his brake marker into the left-hander. The 50-metre board there stamps on the anchors, rolls the car into the left to right, and as he straight lines between the two apexes here, of course, our BMW's heavy cars, therefore they can straight line over the curves a lot more than our GT3s. That's something to watch out for on our GT3s, but now braking about 60 metres into what is the first of 2 hairpins, Melbourne at turn number 11, and as he goes for the late apex there, gets a little bit of oversteer on power there, which in these front engine rear wheel drive cars can be a bit difficult to achieve, but it is possible. But as he now makes his way up towards turn number 12, braking into the final corner here, coming into a Gollard's corner, through turn 12 he goes, gets it nice and tight on exit, which is what you want to stamp on the throttle, and then head towards the timeline. And well, what's that going to be for our first lap of the session? It's a 43.967. Now we'll have to wait and see how everybody else responds, as we do see Alex Smith there goes 600ths faster, and meanwhile behind we've still got more drivers coming on through here, plenty of drivers coming through, as we do see Evan Natafas there for Wild Wings Racing, the Greek driver, setting a 43.560, 3.5 tenths faster than Alex Smith as he heads into turn number 1 once again. But we see Jambu here making his way out to turn number 11 and up towards turn number 12, and as the TSLC driver rolls his way into the left-hander here, it is the case that the Frenchman will feel as though he's got quite a bit to do here, given the fact that he will want to put in a solid performance, and the ideal thing for the TSLC will be that they make it a 1-2 in their qualifying session, and Jambu crosses the line on a 41.807, half a second faster than everybody else, and in particular Joshua Vanstone there, the Podium Sim Racing driver in the 77 car, lovely livery on that car, to be fair, nice mix of colours, heading through turn number 4 right now, and well, we can see that Kieran Sharp, my goodness, he is, and I hate to make a joke out of his name, it's not intended, he is right at the sharp end of that qualifying time right now. It is a 40.582, and the man is absolutely charging, but look at this in response. Alex Nunes from Rapid Drivers Club, it is the case that the Sim Racing Collective are not going to have it all their own way at the start of this qualifying session, as Nunes makes his way down through 2 and 3 and heading up towards the old hairpin at 4.5 tenths faster. But to be fair, we do have plenty of time left in this qualifying session. Well, we only have 5 minutes, so that's plenty for these drivers. That gives them 2 to 3 laps in which to try and maximise their lap time right now. We are hearing that Gis Luna has yet to put in a time, but is making his way around the circuit right now, and as he heads into the final corner here, the half-practice hero, the Dutchman, of course, top 3 pace at Spa. Has he got that here at Donington? And of course he rolls out, there he goes a bit wide. That might be an invalidated lap as he charges to the line. No, it is classified, but it is 1.8 seconds off of Nunes' provisional pole time here. Well, this is a complete change in the order or the runner form, and in particular Alex Nunes absolutely flying as it currently stands. We'll have to wait and see if there is any further improvement, but I can tell you Joshua Vanstone improves to P3 there. He's gone a lot faster. He's improved to what is now a 41.807. That puts him 8 tenths off of Nunes this time. Nunes is not improving at this time. What about Kieran Sharp, the Sim Racing Collective driver here, as he makes his way into the final corner? Will run his way into the left-hander here, and as he comes on through, will he be able to improve this time around as he heads to the timeline? He's up a 10th. And I think it will be a 10th. He goes faster. Yes, he does. He's now only 3.5 tenths off of Alex Nunes, but still a long way to go. And Nunes is improving even more at 40.470. I think it is the case here. The Portuguese wanted to demonstrate immediately coming out of the box today that he's got the pace, he's got it hooked up. And the great thing about Donington is this is a circuit made for touring car racing. We should expect these BMWs, whilst they may be separated in terms of pace in qualifying, if they battle side by side into the corners here, you can expect plenty of racing action between them. It is the case that this circuit goes very well for a TCX style class machine, and of course these BMW M2s reigning from what is the TC America TCX subclass, and as they make the way around right now, Alex Nunes looking very good and firmly on course at potential pole position. But as he makes his way around here, we do look to Evan Natafas from Wild Things Racing, and well, that last lap was a 42.192, and as he makes his way up into the final corner here, can he improve him further? Well, he's 1.3 seconds up on his previous best, in fact. And as he comes on out, we've got more improvements coming on in. We see Jambo up to P3, and Natafas drops down, but he jumps back up to P6 here and heads across that timeline on now a 42.295. So plenty of time out there for a good number of drivers. And speaking of lap time being out there, well, here is Kieran Sharp, who is currently 3/10 of a second faster than his previous best, but Nunes is already 2/10 faster, and he's only halfway around the lap. And as they make the way on around right now, it is the case. You can imagine that Kieran Sharp at this point may be thinking, okay, we just got to get that P2 or find some magic out here. But regardless, if they can get themselves on that front row, it is going to be thrilling between the Sim Racing Collective, their primary team, and also the Rapid Drivers Club Slowpokes machine of Alex Nunes to see how they get off the line and battle into turn number 1. Kieran Sharp now gets within half a tenth, but Nunes comes to the timing line here. It's looking to be a faster lap, and it is an improvement. He puts another tenth to the metaphorical high jump bar here, which Kieran Sharp's got to try and jump over in order to get onto pole. And, well, he's raising the bar lap after lap is Alex Nunes. And let's jump on board here for a flying lap as he makes his way down the hill through the crane of curves and up towards the old hairpin. Now, riding on board here, this gives you a little bit more of an interior perspective, and again, where the driver sat in relation to the perspective they have on the road, and rolling his way through the old hairpin, gets that nicely hooked up using plenty of apex curve, and now heading through the double left of Starkey's up into what will be McLean's at turn number 7, and as they roll the way through turn number 6 here, going onto the anchors, as soon as you come out of the corner, you have to straighten the steering wheel and slam the brakes on, otherwise the car will just lift off and start to pirouette in a direction. But it is the case, making his way out to turn number 7, up into Coppitt's Corner here, rolling the car into the blind apex as he comes on out. Very smooth here from Alex Nunes, albeit fighting the steering wheel all the way out the corner there, right on the ragged edge of adhesion, and now heading down towards what is turns 9 and 10, in towards the S as he goes. He is a 10th down in his previous best right now. He's going to have to try and find that time. Nobody really improving this time around apart from Luna, who's down in P5. In this case, the Dutchman has found a couple of attempts already, but we're hearing that Joshua Vanstone's into the pits. He won't be setting another lap. It is the case that his session is over because we are almost now at the halfway point of the overall 20 minutes. But we stay here focusing on what is Alex Nunes. He makes his way out of the hairpin. He is matching his previous best now and heads up towards the final corner here. This could be a further improvement for Nunes as he rolls his way into the final left-hander. Can he put more distance between himself and Sharp? No, he's coming into the pits. He's decided enough's enough. He's delivered the message, and the message is that he has gone for it. But Kieran Sharp has one more lap to deliver here, but has he left it too late, given the fact as he makes his way out of turn number 1 in 8 seconds time, the GT3s will be making their way around. Now Kieran Sharp is entitled to complete this lap. He started it before the 10-minute window was complete, therefore he may finish it. He is the only driver right now to have gone onto a lap so late. The rest of the M2 field is making its way around, and the GT3s have left the pit lane, so this is going to be very close. I think Kieran Sharp will just have enough breathing room to get this done in time, but as he makes his way up the hill into turn number 7 into what is McLean's, it is the case that he is matching his previous best right now, but he's trying to find 2 temps out there. But speaking of trying to find time, we look to just Luna here in P5, the half practice hero, and as he makes his way up towards the left-hander of Goddard to the final time, what will it be as he rolls his way on through? I don't think he's going to improve here. I think it is the case he's going to be staying P5 maximum. He's into the pits. What about Natafas here? We've also got Nathan Berry. Berry is in. And what about Natafas then? He comes to the line. No, he decides to peel it on in. So we've only got Kieran Sharp out on circuit. The M2s remaining, and right now he is matching his best as we saw earlier, but he is not improving. He's going to need some one-lap magic here in the final couple of corners. I don't think this is going to happen. I think it is the case. It will be a P2 for the Sim Racing Collective's 99 car, and they'll have it all to do in battling with Nunes into turn 1. He pulls off circuit. It is over for the Sim Racing Collective. It will be Alex Nunes on pole for the purposes of what is the race today in the BMW M2 class. But meanwhile, we look to our GT3s, and here is Fides Payne for Team Murder as he makes his way down into the final corner, and as he rolls his way through the left hand here, let's ride on board for our first flying lap of the GT3 qualifying session. As he makes his way across the timeline here, number 42 driving now charging up towards turn number 1. Looking for his brake marker there just as the pit lane boundary is crossed, and as he rolls his way through the right hander of turn number 1, making his way on out and now down the hill through what is of course the crane of curves. Now you'll see in these GT3s they can attack these corners very aggressively, rolling his way and down, using the aero package of the McLaren 720S, trail braking now into the old hairpin, throwing the car into the corner, snapping back at the throttle, and now heading back up the gearbox here, up into full, as he rolls his way under through Starkey's, and now making his way up in towards what is McLean's turn number 7, down from 5th, all the way down to second gear in quick succession there, taking plenty of apex curve and just keeping the car pointed after bouncing off the apex curve on the front right tyre, and now heading into the right hander here of Coppis, and as he makes his way on through, Payne looking fast right now. Oh goodness me, this car snaps loose, and as a result he's onto the grass, and well, that was a very near miss to the wall there, but Payne bringing it back together at the last possible moment, and well saved that man in the 42 car. But meanwhile, ahead of him we do see here Harry Phillips from Wild Things Racing, and of course one of the drivers to miss out on what was the win at Spa Francorchamps with Lehtinen Racing being so strong. But you can imagine the Porsche 901 driver here today will be looking to go toe-to-toe with Lehtinen in the fact that the two of them are great rivals on circuit. We saw that, of course, in Season 1 of the 2.4 World Tour, and I think we're going to see it again here today at Donington as Phillips rolls his way out of the final corner, and this will be one of our very first GT3 laps. He crosses the line, a 1:26.247 to beat, and the Porsche driver, I think, has raised quite the bar there. As he rolls his way into turn 1 once again, we look to see all of our other cars coming out, including Mike Landreth here from Ember Racing, and as he makes his way to the final corner, we do get confirmation there in the YouTube chat from Jan Barth in the 934 car that it may be the case that the team are not racing in the situation for the Team 934 car, in the fact that we do see the fact they've joined in the wrong order on the server, which means they won't be able to do the driver swap as expected, and well, that is unfortunate, Jan, but still, I've made that mistake myself with my teammate in a 6-hour endurance race, and we didn't get to do 6 hours of racing. Instead we did 6 minutes, so completely understandable. And driving the wrong number later without qualifying, well, that's great. Here we're going to have you out on circuit, and we'll keep our eyes out for the 935 car. Of course, won't be taking part in qualifying. But we also see there in the Twitch chat Onizuka at 700 saying, is there a team called Murder? Have I read it wrong? Seriously? It does seem as though their team name is listed as that. Whether that's the correct thing or whether that's just been picked up off a livery, it is the case. That's what they've listed themselves as, and I do believe that may be a bit of an explicit word, in fact, in a different language, although I'm not very good with foreign language. I must be honest with you, the only one I know is German, so I'm going to plead ignorance on that one. But it is the case, if you are tuning in right now on Twitch or YouTube, don't be shy. Feel free to say hi in the chat and let us know how you're doing on this fine Wednesday, and let us know who you're cheering on and who you're expecting to potentially take pole in the GT3 class. So we see Landreth currently P13 making his way up towards what is turn number 11, and we can see that the Porsche 911, or sorry, 991 I should say, of Phillips behind, staying very close indeed. That's from Wild Things Racing, and Landreth heading up towards the final corner here in the Audi R8 Evo 2, and as he rolls his way through the left-hander, one thing we do have to consider here today is that we do have a significant balance of performance update adjustment which has been made to the GT3 class since we last raced, and in particular the Audi has been hit very hard. A very strong car going through what was round number 1, but the car has been toned down, particularly in the higher RPM range. It's seen its power dropped at most circuits, and also some weight added to the car from circuit to circuit, and that may just mean the Audi drivers suffer a little bit by comparison today. But speaking of not suffering, here is Harry Phillips in the 26 car from Wild Things Racing. There's one of his teammates in the other Porsche a bit further down, but right now it is the case that Harry Phillips absolutely flying here in a Porsche that has received some balanced performance adjustments. I don't think specifically for Donington, but it is the case the car has seen some straight line speed improvements, and as he makes his way up towards the turn number 11, it is the case rolling on through. At this point he's got a little bit of traffic in front in the form of the Aston Martin Vantage V8 from Quantum Racing Team, but heading in towards that final braking zone here. Phillips right now 3/10 faster than his previous best. Can he raise that bar to a 25? I think he can, as he comes to the timeline here, and this is going to be a sensation. It's a 25.8, and Phillips immediately pulls it off circuit and jumps the pits. But look at this, Daniel Austins from Aston Martin Racing, Daniel Sim Racing, rolling his way through turn number 4 right now. You'll recall we said he was looking very fast at Spa Francorchamps, and he was denied a great result in the end by a major incident, and today he is bouncing back right now as Daniel Austins, in the fact as he rolls his way through turn number 7. Now Aston Martin, and the Aston Martin has received a sizable adjustment in the balance performance update recently. It has seen improvements across the board in terms of its engine performance. This Aston Martin is absolutely flying right now, and this is not normally a circuit where we see the Aston Martin go strong. It's normally middle of the pack, but it is the case that Austins is showing it can be at the top of the pack as well, as he makes his way through the S's here, taking plenty of apex curve, and that car looking very settled over those curves as he makes his way down towards turn number 11. as he breaks his way on in. We can see Alex Nunes there in the YouTube chat saying hello. We say hello back to you, Alex, and congratulations on that pole position in the BMW M2 class. I assume you're taking a bit of a breather right now, but I can tell you that Daniel Austin is not getting a breather as he makes his way into the final corner here, and in fact he's lost quite a bit of lap time in the last couple of corners, and I don't think this is going to be an improvement for Austin's this time around, and he is just over 5/10 slower than Phillips on pole. But speaking of drivers who are currently improving, I can tell you that Josh Lodge here from Durham University Racing, in this case, number 76 driver here in the McLaren 720S, making his way out of what was their coppice and heading down towards the S's. Looking good as well, currently P14. We haven't got long left in this qualifying session, and as he makes his way through the S's, looking very compact there is the McLaren driver heading in towards Melbourne as he makes his way into the braking zone. He's got a little bit of traffic in front of him, albeit I don't think it's going to hurt him too much. In fact, at that distance, he may just get a nice little tow on the run to the start-finish line, albeit I think that gap is about 1.8 seconds, so it's not really drafting range. But I think Josh Lodge has just timed this just right, and as he rolls his way through the final corner, goes a little bit deep there and has to bring the car back together, but gets a nice run out, and that's going to be improving all the way up to P10. Josh Lodge is improving at 1.4 seconds now off of the pole time, but he's now into the top 10. But we've still got plenty to go here as we see Chris McKenna, the distinct GG driver in the McLaren 720S, moving up to P21. But looking from McLarens to other cars, we look to our championship leader in the GT3 class from Lehtinen Racing, working with Team Honda Racing, and that is Sakari Lehtinen here, the Finn, the Flying Finn as we like to refer to him. It is the case, the number 30 driver here, absolutely on point at Spa Francorchamps, and as he makes his way into the final corner, it is the case we'll be very shortly right on board with him for a flying lap, and in fact we get that on board now as he heads across the line. He's making his way down towards turn number 1 then. That was his warm-up lap. He's going to have to do it all on this one lap as he heads in to Red Gate Corner as he rolls his way through the right-hander there, fighting with the steering wheel. This car is very sensitive to pitch adjustments, and as he heads through the crane of curves, turn 2, down into turn number 3 in short order in 5th gear, and now stamping on the brakes and trail braking into 3rd gear as he rolls his way through the old hairpin, and again you can see the car literally on a nice edge as he heads there through West Starkeys and up towards McLean, heading through the left-hander, now straightening the steering wheel immediately on the brakes into McLean's corner, down to 2nd gear, taking plenty of apex curve to rotate the car, and now using the runoff space before heading up the hill into coppice. From 4th, he drops all the way down to 2nd here, attacking the apex and then stamping the throttle on immediately, and you can see having to fight the steering wheel there to settle the rear of the car down, using the throttle as well to place the rear of the car as firm on the ground as he can, and now charging down the back straight up towards where's the S is here, braking as late as possible, braking about 45 metres from corner and straight line in between the two apexes there at the S's. This is a very fast lap from Lehtinen, but it's only as fast as what he's previously done, and as he breaks his way into Melbourne, he's going to have to deliver it all right at the end of the lap, and as he makes his way out of Melbourne and now heading up towards what is Goddard's, into the final corner he goes, and he makes his way through the left-hander. Well, I think Lehtinen at this point may not be improving as much as he would like. Will he get another lap in is the big question. I think he will just about sneak across that timeline, and he does just sneak into another lap here, but he's got it all to do. And speaking to somebody who had it all to do, but he's done it all, it would seem, While Things Racing's Harry Phillips right now, your pole sitter as it currently stands, 4.5 tenths faster than everybody else. The man has got it hooked up, and it's showing right now, but we've still got plenty of laps to be delivered here in this qualifying session, and we'll see Marcus Fox in the Honda NSX making his way out of what was turn number 8 there at Coppice in Random Racing Machine, and making his way up towards the S's right now. But as he does, it is the case number 1, 2, 3 driver. Is it as simple as 1, 2, 3 to get into the top 10? He'll hope it is, but we've still got other drivers who want to get into that top 10, including Christian Winkler right now, who, I think he's had to stamp on the brakes there. I think it is the case the K-Pax Racing driver in the Bentley has got it very wrong, and he was going purple on our timing screens, but I think it may be the case that was a bit of an invalidated lap, and therefore he was trying to go a bit deep to avoid contact with another driver. But Winkler in the end heading to the timeline in the Bentley, and the number 107 driver here will have to settle for P21 at best. We've still got some laps to come on in, however. We've got the number 30 car making its way around, and that is of course our championship leader as he makes his way in to the penultimate corner. And as he rolls his way through the right-hander at turn number 11, I think it may be the case that for the Finn, P8 is the best he's going to get here in this qualifying session. But to be fair, starting P8 does not rule him out of contention. Indeed, it is the case. If you watch what was the Belgian Grand Prix over the previous weekend, you'll know it is the case. The further you start down the order, the outsider you are, but you can still take the win in the case of Max Verstappen. But that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen, and it is Harry Phillips who takes pole position in the GT3 class by 2.5 tenths ahead of teammate and rival, Patrick Sedaka. And then in the BMW M2 class, it is on pole, Alex Nunes, who will be joined on that front row of the BMW M2s by Kieran Sharp. But what a close qualifying session in the end, and now we look forward to going racing in very short order. But as we do right now, it is a case of looking to the helicam, and well, the helicam basically over the paddock right now. It is the case of Autodrive's itching to go racing once again. And well, were there any surprises today? Well, seeing our Honda's not doing too well, to be fair. Lehtinen just ahead of Fox P8, P9. The Honda's not the strongest at every circuit. It is a car that seems to go very strong at some circuits and not as strong at others. But so we're not too surprised by that. But it is a case we can definitely see our Audis up against it. But to be fair, Daryl Young doing very well. But now we go racing, ladies and gentlemen, and as we do clear the screen of all the information that you can see, it is the case. Let's take you through that grid order from front to back. So starting on pole today in the GT3 class, and indeed overall pole position, Harry Phillips in the United Kingdom from Wild Things Racing in the Porsche 991. He will have the inside line into turn number 1, and of course looking to pick up the win here today to keep him right in the hunt in the championship early on. Joining him on that front row will be his teammate from Wild Things Racing, Patrick Sedaka, the German driver in the Audi R8 Evo 2. It may have received a balance of performance adjustment, but he's not feeling that adjustment. If anything, it's making him only go faster. On row number 2, we have Daniel Austins, the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage driver from the United Kingdom, who is joined by Richard Pixley from Wild Things Racing, the other Porsche 991 driver from Wild Things Racing, who we were referring to earlier on by mistake. Then we do have Chris Hack, I should say, not Chris Pack, although it is a pack of Wild Things Racing machines here, it would seem. But Chris Hack from Wild Things Racing in the Porsche 991, starting at P5 and starting off our third row from the United Kingdom. And he is joined by Daryl Young, the Briton from Wild Things Racing, P6 in the Audi R8 Evo 2. On row number 4, and we didn't talk about him in qualifying, but in a blazing hot livery from Quantum Racing Team is the BMW M4 of Leighton Austin, number 23 car. Great qualifying session for him and really qualifying well. We look forward to seeing how he gets on, but he is joined by championship leader Sakari Lehtinen, the Team Honda Racing Lehtinen Racing driver from Finland in P8. Then we have Marcus Fox, who starts off our 5th row, Random Racing's Honda NSX driver, and he is joined on the 5th row by Chris Black from Blacksmith Racing in P10, the Briton. Then behind them, we do have Josh Lodge from Durham University Racing. The Briton starts P11, joined by Florian Browse at P12 there, the German from Slow Mo Racing in the Audi R8 Evo 2. And then on row number 7, we have Chris Davis from Quantum Racing Team, the South African in the Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage, being joined by Ahmet Serdar Kargulu, the BMW Sim Racing driver there from Turkey, starting P14. We then have Sander Jacobs, who starts P15 from the Netherlands for Dutch Endurance Team Blue, and the McLaren 720S driver, one of our highest placed McLarens, much like Josh Lodge, will be joined by Carl Van Horn on the 8th row for Astro Racing Team Carl. The Aston Martin driver is then followed up by Mike Landreth, who starts P17 in the Audi R8 Evo 2 from the United Kingdom. P18 Cornelius Filbinger here, the German in the Team Vispa Bentley Continental GT3. Flyers Payne starts P19, and it is the case of McLaren 720S driver from Britain will be joined on that row, on our 10th row, by Jordan Cotton in the Off-Pace Motorsports Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage. And it is the case, keep your eyes on this machine. Conde and Cotton are 2 very fast drivers, and they will be looking to try and do their utmost today after a major upset at Spa, which saw them miss out on a potential top 10. Behind them, we have Christian Winkler starting at P21 on row number 11, the K-Pax Racing by Zero Esports driver in the Bentley Continental. The German driver being joined on that row by Denise Pope, the Wild Things Racing driver in the McLaren 720S. And then have Simon Still from SS Racing starting P23, and the Honda NSX driver being joined by Chris McKenna on our 12th row, the Distinct GG driver in the McLaren 720S from the United Kingdom. And in the last of our GT3s, we have Ricardo Mcking from the Dutch Endurance Team Gold Division, and in this case running the Aston Martin V12 Vantage. We get to hear the V12 6-litre engine roar once again, and the Dutchman is the last of our GT3 drivers on the main grid. Of course, we have Jan Bar starting at P34. Then, for our BMW M2 class, we have Alex Nunes, who took pole position for Rapid Drivers Club. The Portuguese starts P26, with Kieran Sharp behind in P27 there, the Sim Racing Collective driver from the United Kingdom. Joining Kieran Sharp on what is row at number 40, we have Anthony Schattler, who starts in P28, the Frenchman. Well, in fact, that will be Mikhail Jambu, or will it be Schattler behind the car? We'll wait and find out. But the Sim Racing Collective's second team starting alongside their main division from Spa. They'll be starting side by side on the 14th row. And then we have Joshua Vanstone starting P29 for what is Podium Sim Racing, joined by Just Luna in P30 is the Dutchman for half practice hero. Then we have Evan Latava starting P31 for Wild Things Racing. The Greek being joined on the 16th row by Nathan Berry from Fresh Sim Racing. And then on our final row, we will have Alex Smith starting P33 for Blacksmith Racing Red. And the Briton is effectively joined by Jan Barth, who starts last but not least with, of course, that error in joining the server with his teammate, joining in the wrong order. The Advisor Racing team will be starting at P34, and I've got it all to do from the back of the grid as the German. But as we look from the back of the grid to the front of the grid, it is the case. We now look to Harry Phillips, who takes our drivers around for the initial warm-up lap, the double file formation lap. And, well, once they come around to the start finish line next time around, they'll be in double file formation, and it will be to that man, Harry Phillips, to take us racing for 2.4 hours. Now, something we haven't really talked about today, track conditions and also the weather conditions around here. It is the case that we have got brilliant sunshine with a little bit of cloud on the horizon, but no rain in the forecast over the course of the entire race today. It is a pleasant right now 21 degrees centigrade ambient, 29 degrees track temperature, and we are expecting the weather to stay relatively calm over the course of the preceding day. Maybe a little bit of wind pickup later on, we're hearing, but no rain in the forecast, and that means that this will be quite a straightforward race. But at the same time, that also throws in a different conundrum, which is when you haven't got the weather to work the strategy to your advantage, you've got to do it all based on the nuance of your driving abilities and indeed where the advantages lie, and whether you go for that undercut or the overcut and make those early overtakes on. And Florian Browse, who we ride on board with here from Slow Mo Racing, will know all about that and will be looking to get into the top 10 as soon as possible. As they all make their way up the hill into Coppice right now, we do see Sander Jacobs there for the Dutch Endurance Team Blue making his way on through it in that McLaren 720S, and we do say hello to what is GT Eddie there in the Twitch chat. Hope you're doing well, Eddie. Didn't expect Distinct to be here besides Gran Turismo 7. Indeed, Distinct GG all over the world of sim racing, it must be said. And Chris McKenna, a lovely chap, I can tell you, down in the paddock, very friendly chap, of course starting P24. He may be feeling a bit down right now, but I'm sure he'll be trying to come up through the order as time goes on. And as they all make the way on around, we do have Scott Ticehurst in the pit lane as well, maybe coming out onto the circuit at some point. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, all our drivers getting ready to go racing. We look to the helicam here, and what a beautiful view we have. All of our GT3s, followed by our M2s. They're all ready to go racing for 2.4 hours for the second time this season. And we now wait for Harry Phillips to take us to the green. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 2 in season 2 of the 2.4 World Tour. And Harry Phillips gets a good start as they make their way into turn number 1. But as they do, look at this. Daniel Austin's on the inside already. With what is Richard Pixley trying to go around the outside. There's elbows out and Pixley's put to the grass as they all make their way through. Oh, going to be some extra contact there as we see Pixley's not wide. He tries to rejoin but chunks the car back off circuit there in order to avoid coming into the rolling path of a whole field of cars as they all make their way down the hill in towards the old hairpin for the first time of asking. But it is definitely the case. There's been a few upsets, but also some drivers gaining considerably here. But meanwhile, in the BMW M2 class, we can see, oh, goodness me, that's Fresh Sim Racing off circuit there in contact with Pixley. But otherwise, most drivers have made it on through. And indeed, well, that is the way it started. And only one driver has lost out massively through all of this, and that is Richard Pixley, who's had a very difficult race. And he now finds himself having to muscle his way through past all what is the BMW M2s early on as they make their way into the second half of this opening lap. As he tries to gain his way up the field, we do look a little bit closer down to the ground, and we can see here already in the battle for what is P12, we do have Amit Sedaka battling with Black, and as they make the way through the Sedaka, having to take a cut to the circuit, and that may already go into his track limit violations as they make the way down towards turn number 11. And looking a little bit further back there, we can see quite the coming together, and that is Carl Van Horn up the inside of what is Chris Black. He gets the move done, or does he, the Dutchman, given the fact now they've got the run up towards Melbourne Corner. And well, here comes Chris Black up the inside once again, and as they roll the way through turn number 12, goodness me, there's contact there between Fiennes Payne and Carl Van Horn. The two drivers are turned, and as everybody makes their way on through, it's a scattering now as they all go charging down towards turn number 1 in the battle to be inside the top 20. And we can see Cornelius Philbinger here up the inside in the Team Vispa Bentley's on the inside of Fiennes Payne. Oh, and there's a knock between the two drivers there. Quite a few elbows coming on out here. I think Fiennes Payne would argue that he had the right to the apex, but I think it's the case that Philbinger would argue he was there. He could just disappear. But as they make their way down the hill this time around, everyone's starting to settle into a little bit of an order, but it has definitely been quite a dramatic opening lap. No major instance as such, but definitely a few drivers who felt their elbows coming out, and we can see Simon still here being passed up the inside by Richard Pixley, but Pixley trying to now go round the outside through Starkeys, and Simon still is having none of it as they make their way through turn 6 and up towards 7 in the battle for P24, and Simon still saying one, maybe down towards the rear of the field, but it's not as I can't fight as they make their way up towards turn number 8, but looking from then to the front of the field, it is a case of Harry Phillips having had a good start here, albeit now with Patrick Sedaka behind him. It is a case of the top two starting to break away, followed by Daniel Austin's in P3, then Chris Hack P4, followed by Lehtinen Austin P5, and Lehtinen Austin having a phenomenal start, but that's not a phenomenal run out of turn number 11. He's going to go defensive here for P5 versus Daryl Young as they make their way in towards the final corner, and as they roll the way through the left-hander here, Lehtinen Austin keeps a nice defensive line here, and the BMW does have the acceleration out the corners. It does very well in terms of straight line acceleration, and now as they make their way out towards turn number 1, once again onto lap number 3, Lehtinen Austin under pressure, and Daryl Young surely not thinking about taking a move to the inside there from that far back. He was thinking about it, but I think it was more of a feint than anything serious, and as they make their way out to the first corner, it is the case Daryl Young in P6, Lehtinen in P7 here, just ahead of Marcus Fox in P8, and it is the case the two Honda and SX drivers have not really gained any places other than gaining through what was attrition with the incident for Pixley on the opening lap, but right now both Fox and Lehtinen working closely together in a way and not fighting one another here in the charge up the hill. For the third time of asking, they're heading in towards McLean's. Behind, we have Josh Lodge in P9, and then a little bit of a gap back to Chris Davies in P10. He completes your top 10, and Florian Browers in P11 here. It is the case of slow-mo racing driver having had a good start, holding on to P11, but he does have Sedaka behind him, and it is the case of the BMW Sim Racing driver staying very close behind as they make their way through Coppice once again. But as they roll on out here, let's tell you a little bit about the BMW M2 class, and it is the case that Alex Nunes leads this class right now, but as we ride on board here with the Rapid Drivers Club driver, remember what I said in qualifying, we saw him take pole position by a reasonable margin, but in the race we're not expecting it to be a completely runaway race for Alex Nunes, and you can see here Kieran Sharp right behind him as they make their way through McLean's and up towards what is Coppice corner, and as they head up the hill this time, well of course the question is, have the Sim Racing Collective decide to underfuel the car to try and get track position, or is it the case that Alex Nunes is just a bit unsettled, or are they on equal fuel and right now both pushing to the maximum? We can't know that, of course. It is the case we can only guess what's happening, but right now it is the case that Alex Nunes having to go defensive into the S's here in the battle for the BMW M2 lead, and as they roll the way through the S's right now, no change, but definitely a battle is on the cards as they make the way down towards what is turn number 11. Further back, we see it is the case we've got 3 BMWs going into what is turn number 11 here, and it's Luna battling for what is P4 in the BMW class, battling there with Joshua Vanstone, and ahead of them that is Mikhail Jambu, and the Frenchman has had a great start to this race, to be fair. He's dropped off of the top 2, but he's defending hard for that P3. The Sim Racing Collective want a double podium here today as they make the way into the final corner, and Jambu right now under major pressure, and this is a very different story from what we saw at Spa in terms of our BMW M2 drivers are right on the offensive straight away, and you love to see it as they make the way down towards turn number 1 once again. But it is the case Vanstone here in the back of this group. We ride on board here with the podium Sim Racing driver. It is the case just waiting right now, and here's the thing with these BMWs as well, you have to be patient in looking for the moves. It is the case that everybody's running a very similar car. There's not too much you can change on the setup of these cars compared to a GT3, so therefore everyone's relatively equal. It all comes down to holding your nerve, keeping it consistent and not making mistakes. So we see that both drivers make a major error going off circuit, and this is the opportunity for Vanstone. He goes around the outside there of Luna. Can he make it a 2 for 1 as they head up the hill here, and it looks slow, but it's going to be faster than the cockpit, and as they make the way into McLean's, he's going to look up the inside here, but here's the case we can see that Jambu holds the outside line, and Vanstone, to be fair, respectful but firm, and it was the same from Jambu there. He looked at it, but look at Luna coming on back here for P4 as they make the way through Coppice corner, but the thing is you want to go deep through Coppice to carry the speed on corner exit, and Luna now has to wait. Meanwhile, up front, we can see Alex Nunes here under major pressure as they make the way through the S's, and right now Alex Nunes having to hold on to that lead for dear life, and we're not even 10 minutes into the racing, and our BMW M2s are absolutely on the battle. But as they roll their way on around at this point, it is the case that Nunes right now having to go very defensive here from corner to corner. And this is a major problem for Nunes in the fact that it's just not the case that he can break away. If anything, Sharp right now is showing greater pace here, and I wonder whether they have gone for an aggressive approach to this opening stint. But as they make the way on out, we do have a major incident a bit further down the order, and well, we'll have to take a look back at what's happened very shortly, but I believe it is the case that we have had one or two drivers drop, and Josh Lodge in particular, we're hearing, has had a bit of a moment. He's in fact dropped down to P11, and well, we can't quite get a replay on that, but what we can tell you is that now Lodge is potentially dropping to P12 with Kargulop is inside, but Kargulop can't beat him on the brakes. And if anything, now this presents an opportunity to Chris Black behind him, P13. In what is there, the green black Porsche 991 to try and come on through for that P12. But as we look back to our GT3 drivers here, you can see Black taking a little look to the inside there into the final corner, trying to get Kargulop to open the steering wheel there by thinking that it was going to be the case the Porsche should be there along his inside, but not to be. And as they make the way onto another lap, in the case of Kargulop now has to try and defend in the run up towards turn number 1. But as they roll the way on through, out through the right-hander here, it is the case that Kargulop is staying where he is. Indeed, these guys all staying in formation right now, but you can imagine at any moment one of them makes a mistake and the battle will erupt. And well, speaking of erupting, we told you to watch out for Callum Condé in off-pace Motorsports' machine, the Aston Martin. It's already up to P15, and it is now chasing after Winkler in P14 there as they make the way down through the crane of curves, and as they head through the right-hander there of what is the old hairpin, it is the case the off-pace 127 car is definitely trying to charge. As we ride on board here with the Aston Martin driver as he hunts after P14 into the braking zone he goes, and as he does, no gain this time. And the problem of course for the Aston Martin is it's one of those cars which is quite weak with regards to its initial RPM banding, in terms of it doesn't have much power in the low RPM, so therefore this car you really do need to be selective with which gear, and that's the thing that Callum Condé is having to work. He's trying to use the right gear to get the run on these straights out of the corners as well, and that Bentley by comparison very efficient in terms of low RPM acceleration. It's a completely different car in terms of the way the engine is working, and therefore we have that contrast between the two machines as they make the way up into Melbourne once again. No change this time around, but meanwhile, speaking of change, Richard Pixley right now still battling with what is, well, in fact he's got ahead of Ricardo Mcking, and well, Mcking now under pressure here from Carl Van Horn, who takes a look to the inside there into the plough to the corner. Oh, goodness me, Simon still turns Carl Van Horn by looks of things, and Van Horn's not going to be impressed with that one. It is the case the Astro Racing Team Carl driver here having a difficult day, being made only more difficult as now he has up his inside. That is, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is going to be Ticehurst who gains the place of it. Scott Ticehurst, who started from what was the pit lane effectively. The 352 driver now up another position, or is he, as they drag race their way up towards turn number 1, side by side into the braking zone here. Ticehurst gives plenty of space, now breaks his rival, but he's got to be careful of using that pit lane exit of course, because when we do get to the pit window, it is the case, or when our drivers are coming into the pit, so I should say, not to confuse things, it is a case that Ticehurst will need to be aware of the fact somebody may be coming out that pit lane and he can't use all the width he craves. But meanwhile we look from them to our BMWs, who are now having the lead GT3s coming through, and this battle for P3 in the BMW M2 class is still going, despite the fact they've now got the GT3s trying to knife fight their way through the M2s, and as they make the way through the S's, you can see how this is causing everybody to bunch up, and as they roll the way into the corner, Lehtinen Austin here under major pressure from what is Lehtinen and Marcus Fox, and this is not the way Lehtinen Austin wants to clear this traffic. It is the case, he's been put under major pressure as they make the way up into turn number 12 into the final corner, and he goes a bit deep there but brings the car back to the apex curve. But Lehtinen definitely now starting to get feisty as meanwhile they come across that timeline, and at the head of this pack is Daniel Austin's running P3, and right now Daniel Austin's just trying to deliver on that pace of that Aston Martin. And we know it is very strong over race distance. It's one of the strongest cars in terms of tyre management and also its fuel conservation compared to some of its peers. And right now Daniel Austin has got to try and open that gap to Hackz, because if Hackz gets close enough, he'll be drawn into a world of pain with so many cars behind battling for that P4 position. They want that P3 as well. But as they make the way through the double left of 5 and 6 right now, you can see they're the leaders in the BMW M2 class, all hugging that inside line, wanting to stay clear of the pack of GT3s coming through. And meanwhile, Honda NSX drives here, Lehtinen and Fox have not found their way on through. They will now up into Coppice, but they lose out considerably here. But to be fair, being very patient, and as they make their way through the corner, we look a bit further back here and we can see that Chris Davis from Quantum Racing Team trying to find his way on through as well. And as they make their way up the hill, it is the case all the drivers rolling them away on through. And right now Chris Davis makes it on through. Carl Van Horn, by comparison a bit further back here, finds himself gaining the place on what is Simon Steele. And as they make their way through, that is Ticehurst. And well, they're trying to battle one another battle around the M2s as well. And I think it's the case our M2 drivers at this point may be sweating a little bit and worrying about what's coming. But it's definitely the case when you've got a battle in one class converging on a battle in another class, it's never comfortable for anyone. And that is the nature, we should say, of multi-class racing. It is not easy, and our drivers are definitely showing it is not easy here today. But as they roll the way on around at this point, Van Horn definitely trying to regain some places. He lost much earlier on. It has not been a happy start to his race, but as we look from him to a bit further up the order in particular, we do look here to Josh Lodge battling side by side with Cargulu. It's Cargulu on the left hand side here in the battle for P11 as they head in towards turn number 1. Cargulu on the inside, and as they roll the way into the right hander, I think Cargulu's going to get the move done here, or is he? Because Lodge is going for the cutback. It's a nice cutback run here, but look at Chris Black as well behind as they make the way down the hill through the crane of curves, and Chris Black stays right there with them as they roll their way into the old hairpin. He's going to look up the inside here. He's not close enough, however, and as we ride on board here, they X out the old hairpin, and Chris Black from Blacksmith Racing just getting it slightly wrong on corner X, just could not carry the speed he wanted with the old hairpin. In fact, I think he was slightly offline into the apex. They're trying to make a move on Cargulu, but look at this, where they're closed up behind the M2 leaders. This is costing them the ability to carry speed into the corners. Into Coppis they go, but the thing is that Alex Nunes, who tries to stay on the outside of the BMW M2 that's just staying out of the way, it's the case he can't go anywhere else other than stay wide, and right now Cargulu and Black have both lost out, and this is Josh Lodge some time here, some breathing room, which he may be able to use just to calm things down a little bit as they roll their way through the S's once again. But as they head on out at this point, it is the case that all three drivers staying nose to tail in the charge down towards turn number 11. But a little bit further back, we can see there is the case of Christian Winkler right now in P14, which is going to go up the inside there of the Sim Racing Collective 99 machine, and Winkler, I think, left it a little bit late there, but he's gone for it. But meanwhile, Callum Conde has got Sander Jacobs trying to go round the outside, but Jacobs is covered off there. Conde covers his outside, but as they make the way down into the final corner here through Gollards they roll, you can see it is the case. It looks like Jacobs just getting a little bit too close for comfort there. He has to back out. He's trying to get the nose in there on corner exit, but a little bit premature, and as a result, Conde stays in P15 for now. But as they roll the way into the right hander at turn number 1, it does look as though Conde at this point is really having to deal with the pace of Jacobs behind, and Jacobs is going nowhere other than right on his 6 as they make the way down the hill through the crane of curves once again. But as they come charging on down, it is the case we can see how Conde really under that pressure as they roll the way up towards turn number 6 for another time of asking. But as they make the way up the hill, is the case we look from them to a little bit further down the order, and in particular to Denise Pope here running in P17. And the Wild Things Racing driver will switch to the McLaren. It's definitely seemingly paying off right now. Much more consistent run of laps. The last couple of laps have been quite strong from Pope. And as she makes her way up the hill towards turn number 8, of course that camera doesn't really give you an idea of just how much of a hill it is into turn number 8. Pope breaking away from Mike Landreth here, who finds himself now sandwiched between the two BMW M2 leaders. As they roll the way on out of turn number 8 and up towards 9, it is the case we can see a bit further back. It is Cornelius Filbinger here, the Vispa Racing driver, who is under a bit of pressure, and that is Ticehurst, who's trying to get in on the fight. But speaking of getting on the fight, Sander Jacobs has just made his way into P15. This is how it happened. Take a look back only moments ago, and this was in the run to the S's here. Now it looks as though Callum Conde at the time running in P15 was going to get caught in the traffic a little bit. Well, I don't think he was going to get caught in the traffic. In fact, that's just a Bentley in front, but Conde I think has made a mistake, and there's the mistake there, just taking a bit too much curb at turn number 10 in the S's, and in the end Sander Jacobs just simply saying, well, if you've not got the speed into Melbourne, I'll simply take the place for you. And well, that is how Sander Jacobs has moved up into P15 as we now return to the live pictures. But as we come back to these live pictures, we've got more happening. Scott Ticehurst has made his way ahead of Richard Pixley into P20 as they roll the way out to turn 1 and down the hill into the crane of curves here, and these guys chasing after Cornelius Filbinger, of course, as they make the way in towards the old hairpin once again, but running the way through the right-hander. Does look as though things are settling down a little bit now in the GT3 class after what was quite an aggressive opener, but we'll have to wait and see whether things are calm for too long before the next storm arises. Oh, goodness me! And well, there's contact there between Filbinger and Ticehurst absolutely going for it there, and well, I don't think Filbinger's going to be happy with that, as it is the case that Richard Pixley says, well, don't mind if I do, and he comes on through as well. Pixley, of course, no stranger to being given the elbow off the circuit, he would argue, at turn number 1 on lap number 1 in the instant between himself and what was, I believe, Daniel Austin, unless my memory doesn't serve me correctly. But right now these guys are focusing on what they can do, and it's the case that Ticehurst there gaining P19, but I do wonder if a word will go to the stewards room after. Keep in mind, of course, This race is not live stewarded, it is post-race stewarded, so our drivers had to make their reports post-round, but indeed there is a very dedicated stewarding team at Rapid Drivers Club, and they will be analysing everything that's reported accordingly. But right now, speaking of reporting things, I can report to you it is the case that despite all the interweaving between the classes, Alex Nunes leads the BMW M2 class, but still only by 2 tenths ahead of Kieran Sharp here. These guys are in P28, P29 overall, but more importantly, this is P1, P2 in the BMW M2s, and this battle is going nowhere, but it's staying firmly together as they make the way out of the final corner here and down towards another lap. They go on to what for them is lap number 11. As they charge on through, still of course having to deal with some GT3s coming on through, and that behind them there is still in the Honda NSX, and still I think being a bit patient here as they make the way through turn number 1. But as they make the way on out of the corner and now down towards turn number 2, it is the case we can see there, and it's very interesting to see how Kieran Sharp, they're trying to stay with Nunes, and the two of them work it together in an odd way. I think they're enjoying this battle a lot between one another, and they don't want a GT3 to come between it, because it does look as though when a GT3 comes along, given how close they are, Sharp, when he moves on, it's almost as if it's instinctive the two of them let the GT3s go together rather than trying to put a GT3 between the pair of them, particularly Alex Nunes right now, which would be the ideal situation. But it's great to see these two running so close together, and of course we have still got over 2 hours of racing. Would you believe it? And well, it is a case you're going to have to believe it, because we've got plenty still to come. But you can definitely see that Kieran Sharp taking plenty more apex curve by comparison with Nunes. I think he's got to be careful there that he doesn't cut it too much at Coppice, as otherwise he might start to pick up some track limits warnings. Get 4 of those, you've got a drive-through penalty. But as they make the way down towards the S's, and of course that drive-through penalty being an automated one, not one assigned by a live stewarding team, it is a case here track limits can be a little bit prickly at what is the Donington Park circuit. Nothing compared to some other circuits that we've seen, such as, for example, Paul Ricard in the past, but it is the case here at Donington. Kieran Sharp definitely right now trying to exploit every little bit of track surface to get closer to the race leader. But speaking of the leaders, we look from the leaders of the BMW M2 class to the leader of what is the GT3 class, and Harry Phillips continues to lead here after what was that absolutely brilliant pole lap with Patrick Sedaka, his teammate, of course, in rival teams for the purposes of this series, and Wild Things Racing's Sedaka division definitely right now trying to chase after what is Phillips in front, and the gap between the two of them standing at 6 tenths as it is now. But with the interweave with the BMWs there, Phillips in fact getting a little bit compromised through Goddard's, and that may just cost him some critical time in the mix. Meanwhile, a bit further back here we can see it's Callum Conde who makes his way past Christian Winkler, and Winkler was going quite slow there. Has there been an error for Winkler? We'll be taking a look back very shortly, but just before we do, well, Callum Conde not able to make the move then to Melbourne. Let's take a look back. But this was only moments ago into Coppice corner, and that's how it happened. So in the end, Winkler on the outside of Coppice, and well, we saw Sander Jacobs coming through immediately, and I think Winkler may have just been a little bit compromised by the M2 he was running with. But as they made their way down the back straight here, well, Conde said, well, it's going to be a 2-for-1 special here, and I'm going to be the second one in the pair, and a nice advantage taken there from Callum Conde. And as they rolled their way down in towards Melbourne, it was the case that Winkler trying to go as late on the brakes as possible, but not close enough to be able to go for the move. But as we return to live pictures, it is the case now that Sander Jacobs up to P14, Callum Conde back into P15, and Christian Winkler dropping 2 places down to P16 in that Bentley. But as they roll the way around, the first 20 minutes of this race are complete. We've still got what is 124 minutes to go, just over 2 hours. It is the case we're still expecting that plenty here, and it's not just about the overtakes on circuit, it's also the ones on the strategy. And for those of you tuning in right now and wondering, well, how can we know if a driver's cleared their mandatory pit stop in which they've got to take on fuel and also a tyre change? Well, you can see there on the time and tell on the left hand side of your screen, between the driver number and the gap to the next driver, we do have an orange rectangle and the number 1 in white, and it is the case if that's there, that means that there's a mandatory pit stop outstanding, and it is 1 mandatory pit stop still to go, whereas once they've cleared that pit stop, it will go green, and that means there are no more pit stops expected. But one thing we didn't talk about earlier on, but now we can talk about as we move a little bit more in towards those strategic faults, where our drivers now starting to look more towards where they need to gain positions and how they want to play their strategy. We've typically seen at Donington Park, particularly when it's a warm day, such as it is today, a track temperature of 29 degrees centigrade, not overly warm compared to what we've seen in the United Kingdom over the last couple of months, but still relatively warm here in the Leicestershire region. It is the case that we typically see tyres degrade quite rapidly here at Donington. This is a circuit which is aggressive on its tyres due to the sweepers, so we may see more than 1 stop for some drivers here. I think some drivers will gamble on the 1 stop, others will decide to go all in on the fast and aggressive 2 stop here, and it'll be interesting to see how those strategies come together late on in the race. But speaking of coming together, we do look to Evan Latafos here, who right now running at 13.5 seconds off the back of Vanstone in what is running in P5 in the BMW M2 class. And I think just Luna's been involved in a bit of an incident over the last couple of laps that's cost him quite dearly. Right now, Latafos, I think, will be worried about the fact that he's got Luna closing gradually. But meanwhile, we look back to the head of the BMW M2 class, and this is for position here. It's Kieran Sharp, and well, I think he's got the move done, or has he, as Nunes comes back on the inside here. They've had to navigate the GT3 traffic as they make their way out of the penultimate corner, heading up towards what is turn number 12. You can see that a little bit of a peak from Alex Nunes, but there is Kieran Sharp into lead of the BMW M2 class. And now can the Sim Racing Collective driver from the Team 99 portion of the Sim Racing Collective, can they break away, or will Nunes now mount the counter-attack offensive as they make their way into turn 1? Well, I think for Nunes right now, he's got to think very carefully here whether he's got the car that's made for battling for that position, whether he's invested in a track position up front, or whether it is the case that he feels as though running in P2 is nothing to be upset about. Because if he does start to really go aggressive, then you know he's been focused very heavily, or his strategy is centered around being the lead driver of this pair, and therefore it is a case that we'll be seeing him have to push it very hard. Whereas Kieran Sharp right now just seems to be so calm in the cockpit of that car, and as they make the way up towards turn number 7 into McLean's roll once again, it is the case that Nunes staying very close behind as they roll their way up towards Coppice corner. But as they do, literally nothing between the pair of them. The lap times show as well as they make their way through the right-hander at turn number 8, and Nunes right now trying to mount that counter-attack as we ride on board here with the Rapid Drivers Club driver from Portugal. And as he heads down towards the S's, he's getting very close, but a lift off there I think it will be. Indeed, he backs off a little bit and decides, you know what, patience is the better part of valor, as they roll the way through the S's and up towards Melbourne. As they charge all the way down towards turn number 11 at this point, I think we're not going to be shy of more racing action between these two later on as they head out of the Melbourne corner here. You can see those different lines as well. But meanwhile, we've had a bit of an instant further up the road. There's Scott Ticehurst and there's Richard Pixley going very slow and being passed there by Cornelius Philbinger. What exactly's happened? We take a look back to only moments ago, and that's Ticehurst up the inside there of Denise Pope. Now they made their way, oh goodness me, and Pope in a little bit of contact there with Ticehurst, and as they made their way into Coppice, another little bit of elbows out, and the three drivers coming together there. Well, I think Ticehurst will not be too pleased with that. I think Pixley will be absolutely frustrated as he's gone off circuit again through no fault to his own, he would argue, and I think I'd have to agree with him in that situation. And well, he has lost out massively as Richard Pixley, dropping down to P21, and his recovery drive cannot become more of a recovery drive, and it is becoming an increasing amount of one every time we cut to him, it would seem. But as he rolls his way through turn number 1 here, now stuck behind Cornelius Philbinger as they make their way out of the first corner and down the hill towards turn number 4, and Philbinger having to go defensive here in the long charge. And as they make their way into the old hairpin here, will Pixley roll his way in to the inside? He does indeed. It is the case that Pixley in the end having to back off and wait for the run up towards turn number 7, but it's going to be 3 wide up the hill. They literally go round the BMW, the pair of them. That's the number, what was, I'm trying to see which of the BMWs that was. I think that's Joshua Vanstone there, but my goodness, Joshua Vanstone literally finds himself on the other end of a reverse Moses manoeuvre, and in the end Philbinger loses the place. Pixley gets it done, and well, Richard Pixley is not taking any prisoners anymore. That is a man who wants to get right back up there, and you can understand it, but that was very brave stuff between them as they literally made it 3 wide for a brief moment. And well, meanwhile, just ahead of them, Ticehurst here chasing after what is in front of him. Well, in fact, Ticehurst off circuit. What on earth has happened to Scott Ticehurst into the wall here? Well, Scott Ticehurst, our Audi driver, not having a happy day at the office. What exactly has happened? But this was only moments ago, making its way out of Coppice corner, chasing after was at the time Mike Landriff, and well, squirming from side to side there, trying to get into the rearview mirror of Mike Landriff to get him to make a mistake. Misses breaking point into the S's. They rolled their way through, out of the corner they went, and the car just gave way there for Ticehurst. It looked as though it was planted, but to the contrary, the car just simply let go very gradually there. Well, I've not seen that in all my time of covering GT3s at Donington Park. Normally, it's quite an aggressive moment for the car. It's not only a gentle snap to the inside, but something there went wrong for Ticehurst, and now it's the case he's down in P24, chasing after Ricardo Mcking in the Aston Martin V12 Vantage. But behind, we do hear that Fires Payne has got a drive-through penalty, and that will be for track limits, where whereby he's picked up 4 invalidations, and therefore 4 invalidations where he's been considered to gain time by the automated shielding system, to clarify. And now it is the case he has got to come into the pits that drive through within 3 laps of receiving it. And well, meanwhile, Ricardo Mcking holding that P23 here ahead of Ticehurst as they make the way out of McLean's corner. And well, that Aston Martin will be very fast down the straights, but in the corners I would imagine it's not going to be as wieldy by comparison as he makes his way through the long right-hander. But as he does at this point, we do look from them to a bit further up the order, and in particular to one driver who really has been trying to put some moves on early in this race, albeit is the case now as he makes his way into turn number 1, settling into a little bit of a rhythm at this point, albeit not for too long, given the fact he's very close to his rival in front. It is Chris Black, of course, the Blacksmith Racing driver in P12 in the 917 car, chasing after Sedaka at this point. And as they make their way down the hill at this time in towards the old hairpin, we'll have to wait and see whether Chris Black can close on up here. The runner form would say that Kargulu is matched on pace by Chris Black right now, so it is ebbing and flowing, and I think it will more come down to how the tyres go off on these cars as time wears on. And to be fair, both cars quite aggressive in their own unique way on tyres. It is the case that Porsche, very sensitive car, very prone to overheating those rear tyres, and we can imagine, given the fact that this circuit is a clockwise circuit, more right-handers than left-handers, it will be the left-hand tyres, particularly that rear left tyre, which will be feeling the brunt of the wear. Meanwhile, for our BMW M4 in the hands of BMW Sim Racing's Kargulu, it is the case that BMW, if you overdrive it, it very quickly overheats the tyres. If you drive it within its limits, it's very comfortable on tyres. It's a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde car, because you really want to unleash that 1-lap pace by driving it on that aggressive nature, but do so, and then of course the Hyde of the car rears its ugly head in the fact that it will start to really rip into that tyre life. So therefore Kargulu, I think at this point, just trying to find that balance in terms of the pace of the car as he rolls his way through the final corner and comes to the end of his current lap. But he's chasing after what is in front, Chris Davies there, and the South African from Quantum Racing team, running a very solid race as it currently stands. And right now the number 15 driver not really putting a foot wrong, if anything, just keeping his head down, delivering the laps time and time again, and holding on to that final spot in the top 10 as it currently stands. But speaking of someone who's getting their head down as well, it is Lehtinen here, who's found his way ahead of camera, ahead of Leighton Austin for P6. And as they roll their way out of Coppice, we ride on board here with the Quantum Racing team driver, the 23. Oh goodness me, and that was very close there to Evan Latafis' Wild Things Racing M2, in the fact the Quantum Racing team driver there, I think, feeling a bit of snap oversteer, trying to power through it, and then suddenly realised, if I'm going to power through it, I'm going to power my way into a smaller BMW. So it was the case then Leighton Austin had to take a bit of emergency manoeuvres, but he's managed to avoid the contact. We think there may have been a little bit of a bump there, but that could have been far, far worse, to be fair. But Leighton Austin, well, no stranger to danger, it would seem, as we've seen, of course, in the Rapid Drivers Cup Community Super League, but positive danger in the fact he's able to keep the car on the road and keep it together. And as they roll the way through the left-hander here of what's the final corner, it is the case that Leighton Austin right now just staying right behind Lehtinen and not letting the Honda NSX driver go. And as they charge up towards turn number 1 once again, it is a case, of course, that this Honda NSX just has not been on the pace by comparison with what we're perhaps expecting here, in fact Lehtinen in that P6 position. And in fact, I'm not exactly sure where Marcus Fox has dropped to. Oh, well, there my eyes to see, but he's in P8 right now. It is a case that I need to look further than my nose, and well, the Honda NSXs just have not had the pace here compared to at Spa, albeit they're both running in the top 10, but it's not what we were expecting by comparison with the performance last time out. But of course, that's what balance of performance does. It means that every car is a little bit different at each circuit, and some circuits will see a car go stronger than others, and Leighton Austin definitely showing the BMW M4 has a lot of life here as they roll their way through Coppice. As they roll their way through the turn 8 corner, heading down the back straight, you can see in front a little bit of negotiating to be done here as our BMW M2 drivers make their way down into the S's, and in particular this is at Mikhail Jambu from the Sim Racing Collective 199 team car, running in P3, and the car still being pursued closely by Joshua Vanstone. As we've got a car, that's Simon Still, parked off circuit, he's holding his brakes right now, he'll return to the circuit, it's clear, oh goodness me, and Jambu doing a bit of contact, and Vanstone is going to try and capitalise here coming out of Melbourne, but it's not going to work in the end. I think it's the case that Vanstone just taking a little bit too much apex curb and also some grass for the curb, and as it was the case that Vanstone not able to get his throttle down and therefore sees the position. He did the right approach, but he just didn't execute it as best as he could have, I think you'd argue. But as they make their way up towards turn 1, you can see there is the case that Marcus Fox literally having to switch from left to right to find his way past the M2 pair. It is the case that they make their way into turn 1. Vanstone right now, well, he's not going to be too far for going battling once again as they roll the way through the turn 1 corner and head down the hill. But as they come charging on down, Vanstone, to be fair, has been with his rival for some time. And as we ride on board the dashboard here of the M2 machine, it is the case the Podium Sim Racing driver definitely trying to get onto that podium here today and trying to prevent the Sim Racing Collective from making it a 2-car podium as they roll the way up towards what is a turn at number 7, heading up towards McLean's. Now, what's very interesting about these BMW M2s in terms of the power they've got in them, you may be thinking at this point, well, if you look at a BMW M2 on the BMW store, for example, they normally are classified in somewhere in the region of about 420 to 450 horsepower. It's the case in a lot of European series, you will see these cars running 450 or so horsepower. These machines are around 360 horsepower, so it is the case in terms of how you drive these machines, they haven't got a huge amount of grunt behind them compared to GT3s that are running in excess of 500 horsepower. The point being here, with these cars you really have to be bold on the throttle. You've literally got to put your foot down as soon as possible through these corners, because in doing so you'll gain whole tenths of time. These cars are made for what is essentially introductions to major racing, and therefore as a driver you're encouraged to be quite firm and aggressive with them, and that's what Vanstone's trying to do here. You can see with that line into Melbourne, really trying to tuck it into the apex, trying to get back on that power nice and early, whereas Jambo going a little bit deep into the corner, using more of a little bit of a traditional line into these hairpins, and you can see Vanstone once again going very late on the brakes there. In fact, I don't think he realised that Jambo was going to be right there on the apex, and as they make their way across the timeline at this point, it is the case that Vanstone right now definitely showing the more aggressive driving style out of the pair, and I think Vanstone will be looking for a move soon if he's able to get close enough, but I think he's going to have to wait a little bit, just for the simple reason he's now got a whole pack of GT3s coming on through. As they make their way down through the crane of curves here, well, it's going to be very tight. As we can see, Vanstone here finds he's got Carl Gula coming on through, and Carl Gula being very brave there. And goodness me, well, that is very unfortunate. Chris Davies there, well, I think he was playing it safe, but in the end, by playing it safe, he parked himself behind Vanstone's car, and he's just lost 2 places for the price of 1 lapped car as he makes his way up into turn number 7 right now. And I think Davies, there's not a swear word in that cockpit, well, he's not a gentleman, because right now the South African driver has had an absolute nightmare of a moment, and to be fair, played it safe. We'd expect that a rapid driver's car, but it's the case it's not worked out for him, and Carl Gooley and Chris Black have come through. Meanwhile, further up the road, I can tell you that Lehtinen still battling with Leighton Austin for P6. The Quantum Racing team drives here trying to get a move on, and Leighton Austin in particular went for the move on the inside into Melbourne, wasn't able to find it, and now as they make their way out of the final corner here, they head to the timeline once again, and now down towards turn 1, and Marcus Fox a little bit further back, just waiting in the wings here. He's 2.5 seconds off of the battle in front of him, and I think for Fox, the Austrian driver here, who we know is a very tactical driver, he's all about the strategy. He's waiting, I think, to see how the strategy can unfold and how he can potentially undercut that battle in front to gain 2 places without having to put an elbow out. But we'll have to wait and see what he does in practice. He rolls his way into turn number 4 here, and as he does, we look from what is Fox to Alex Nunes here in P2. And as he rolls his way down for the crane of curves here in the battle for the lead of the BMW M2 class, we still, of course, got an hour and 50 minutes to go, plus the final lap. We've got a long way to go. In terms of our ambient conditions, ambient temperature stayed the same, 21 degrees. We're getting a slight bit of wind coming across the circuit now, albeit a 1 to 2 kilometre an hour wind, so it's nothing in the relative scheme of things, but it might slightly change the braking zone. But we do have a little bit of cloud coming over, and track temperature has dropped a degree centigrade to 28. Well, that all means in practice we may see that track temperature fall a little bit more at certain sections of the circuit, but on average it should hold quite consistently, so it means we've got stable conditions for stable racing, and that's what all our drivers will want right now, as we see Nunes here trying to find his way back past Kieran Sharp. But Kieran Sharp, ever since getting ahead, well, he's not able to break away, but he's definitely showing no signs of slowing down and yielding as they roll the way through the S's. As they make their way up towards turn number 11, we do look from them to Lehtinen versus Leighton Austin. We cut away from this a moment ago, and as we look from what is at the back of the Lehtinen Racing Team Honda racing machine, you can see there Leighton Austin as they make their way on to lap number 25 in this battle for P6. It's the Honda NSX versus the BMW M4, and Marcus Fox is right there with them, and Fox at this point just waiting and being very crafty and looking for that opportunity as they come charging on down the hill through the crane of curves into what is the old hairpin, and well, no gain here for Leighton Austin right now. I think it's really coming for Leighton Austin later in the lap. I think the first half of the lap seems to suit the Honda more, but it's in the latter portion from Coppice all the way up to the timing line. That's where the M4 just seems to have that run, but as they make the way through what is McLean's curve there, you can see again Lehtinen just going a little bit deeper into the apex by comparison with Austin, who takes a slightly earlier apex. And these differences in lines, I think for Austin, he's really having to rely on using the curves to turn the car through the apex, whereas Lehtinen's using that natural rotation in the Honda, whether it being a mid-engine rear-wheel drive machine, so the centre of mass is further back. He can naturally go through the corners a little bit more aggressively, just using that weight transfer, whereas for Leighton Austin, he's got to use the curves in order to help him roll the car through. And as they make their way down into what is the Melbourne hairpin here, you can see the fresh sim racing machine, which is being driven, unless I'm very much mistaken, by Nathan Berry at this point, running in what is effectively P7 in the BMW M2 class, yielding there to the GT3s coming through. But this time, as they make their way into the final corner, Austin not close enough to try and affect the pass as they roll the way out. But wait a second, we're here, and there's been a bit of an incident involving, I think, Denise Pope, Mike Landreth, and a couple of others. Let's take a look back at what's happened. This was only moments ago, and that in front was filming as this is a P18, and as they made the way down into the old hairpin here, Pope came in very hot and tapped the rear of Landreth. Well, that's very unfortunate for the drivers, and well, as the case, they both parked up, and we can see a flash of light there from Denise Pope, I think recognising just wait until Landreth gets back up to speed, and then Pope returns to the circuit. But McKenna, Carvan Horman, Scott Ticehurst all came through, so 3 places lost for both drivers as we now return to those light pictures, and we can see here Mike Landry from Ember Racing now down to P22, Denise Pope P23, but still plenty of distance to go, plenty of time to go. The race is not over for these guys. They can still finish well inside the top 20 come the finish. But as they roll the way on out right now, we look a little bit further up and we see that Richard Pixley here in P15 as it currently stands, and in fact I think Honda just trying to come back at him. The move was made just off camera a moment ago. As they roll the way down through the crane of curves this time, it is the case of Richard Pixley staying ahead for the time being up to P15. And of course, Richard Pixley putting the car in the second row of the grid in qualifying. He has got the pace in the car to be right up there. But right now finds himself having to do the ultimate recovery drive after being knocked down the field twice, and it is the case now doing this recovery drive for the second time of asking. He won't want to do it for a third time, although a third time is lucky for some. That's bad luck if you've got to make 3 recovery drives in one race. And as he makes his way out of Coppice, it is the case making his way past the BMW M2 leaders, and well, we can see out there Conde trying to come on through as well, but Pixley being given a little bit of a breather as the number 7 driver charges through the S's once again. As he charges his way on through and up towards the penultimate corner, we look from one Wild Things Racing at Porsche 991 to the lead one, and that is Harry Phillips here, who is still holding an advantage over his teammate and rival Patrick Sedaka. The gap now being at 1.3 seconds as we see the Audi driver here in P2, and then you have to go some way back, approximately 6.5 seconds back to Daniel Austin's in P3. But the thing for Austin's right now, I don't think he'll be worried about the top 2. I think he'll be more worried about the fact that he's got Chris Hackz behind, and Hackz is only 1.1 seconds behind him and staying right there with Austin. And the lap times between the two of them are very comparable. They have not really found any separation in terms of that lap time. And a little bit further back, we've also got Darryl Young in the mix there in P5 as we see the Audi driver there from Wild Things Racing. And indeed, it is a Wild Things Racing top 5 minus 1 car. But as they roll the way out here, they've definitely come out in force today, and we'll have to wait and see how it plays out for the WTR drivers as they make their way into the final corner to complete the current lap. But meanwhile, we look from them to Chris Black, who's been involved in a bit of an incident. He's lost multiple places, and with Blacksmith Racing driver, who was at the time running P12 ahead of Florian Browser and Sander Jacobs, he's now lost the places to the pair of them. We'll take a look back very shortly at what's happened, and in fact, we do have a replay. This was only moments ago. Oh, goodness me. And, well, if you're wondering what's exactly happened there for Chris Black, it was the case he made his way out of McLean's corner, the car on that exit curb. The thing about that exit curb on the left-hand side of the circuit is the red and white striping is raised versus the track surface. The AstroTurfy colour, the green-coloured lower portion of the curb is actually lower than what is the red-white curving. So as a result, when he put the 2 wheels beyond the curb there, the car became unsettled, and you saw that rear left tyre in particular as we returned to live pictures drop down, and that unsettled the car, and then Chris Black had to fight the steering to get the car back onto circuit, couldn't make it stop him from going off circuit, and then he's rejoined, but he's lost 2 places. But to be fair, he may have lost 2 places, but right now riding on board with one of those drivers who gained the place, and Florian Browse in particular from Slow Mo Racing has not got any peace and quiet anytime soon, because he has got Sander Jacobs behind him in P13, and there's the McLaren 720S driver trying to find his way into its P12 position. as they roll the way through the left into right here, heading through what is the run through Starkeys into McLean's and now up towards Coppice. It is the case we can see here. Florian Browse definitely trying to deliver on a strong lap, and he's broken away a little bit there through the run in turns 6 and 7, and as he exits his way out of turn number 8, out to Coppice he goes. Definitely starting to deploy some pace is Browse as he makes his way up towards the S's here, and I think he's now in a bit of a rhythm as he heads in towards the S's. Perhaps it's the case that he enjoys being hunted rather than the hunter, and this is where he thrives because he's definitely opened that gap up. He's put 2 tenths between himself and Jacobs over the course of the first half of the lap, and as they roll the way into the penultimate corner, is this where it will close up between the two of them? Is it a low speed corners where he seems to struggle? I don't think so here. If anything, that gap stays as it is, if not ekes out a little bit more. I think here Brown's definitely right now having a very solid lap. In fact, I think he's about to set a personal best. Although I say that, it seems like it's cursed as he almost loses the rear midway through Goddard's corner, and he throws away the 2 tenths he gained on that lap. But as he makes his way up towards turn number 1, he's got it all to do again as he heads in towards the right-hander. As he makes his way on around here, it is the case that we do look from Browns to a little bit further down the order, and in particular we look to what is Ricardo Mcking here, and well, our Aston Martin V12 Vantage driver. I think it was always going to be the case of the V12 Vantage. He wasn't going to quite be on the pace given the qualifying session he had and whatnot, but we do see battling right now with Jan Barth, of course, the 935 Advisor Racing Team machine, and as he makes his way out of penultimate corner here, having to start from the back due to that technical issue with regards to joining the server, and it is the case right now. They're trying to make their way up the order little by little as they roll the way through the long left-hander there of that turn number 12 and complete another lap. But as they do have the leaders coming through. They've had the top 2 already coming through, but then you've got Daniel Austin's behind here in P3, who right now I think will be feeling a bit of pressure behind in the fact we have Chris Hack here in P4, the Wild Things Racing driver, inching closer as they make their way down the hill, and as they come charging on down, we ride on board the dashboard here of the Porsche 991 driver. You can see in front we do have Alex Nunes there who peels out the way. Austin gets in amongst everyone as soon as possible, but here's that bit of a misplaced timing. Well, Chris Hack in the end has to back up on the exit of what is the old hairpin for the simple reason he would have gone into the back of the Rapid Drivers Club BMW, and we can see they're having to go round the outside to inside through turns 6 and 7 versus the leader of the BMW M2 class, Kieran Sharp, as they make their way up the hill. Austin's is not pulling any punches. The way he's approaching the traffic right now, he really does have a mentality of get out of my way or I'm coming through, and well, it's not a bad mentality to have as long as you keep it safe. Chris Hack, by comparison, taking it a bit more casually through the traffic there, and I think recognised he doesn't want to put a foot wrong as they roll the way into the S's, and definitely 2 very different attitudes of driving here between the 2 drivers. Austin's trying to get a move on and use the traffic to break away from Chris Hack. Hack, by comparison here, taking his time, and I think he feels as though he's got the confidence in the ability of the car and his own pace at this point in the race to be able to close that gap up. Whatever it increases to, he'll bring it on back in short order. Whereas we look back to the exterior cameras here, Daryl Young staying right with him. And well, Daryl Young has closed up little by little over the last couple of laps. So right now, this battle for P3 is definitely on as a three-way fight as they head to the timeline and onwards towards turn number 1. And as they make their way into the right-hander this time around, have we seen anybody come into the pits of their scheduled stops? I hear you ask. Well, we have had a couple of drivers come on in. I think it's more for damage on the car, such as Sebastian Winkler, for example, down P25. He's the main one who we've seen coming in so far, unless I'm very much mistaken. We do have more pit stops in the cars. So of course, we do have the big question of whether anybody is going to attempt a 2-stop here today. As speaking of pit stops, Joshua Lodge is into the pits, and as our cameraman brings the camera around to look at the Durham University racing driver, well, it is the case he's going to drop quite a way down the order here. Indeed, it is our first scheduled pit stop, where it is about the right time here in the race, but I think this could be a sign of a 2-stop on the cards, as we are starting to see a little bit of drop in ambient temperature. It's dropped by a degree to 20, and track temperature has come down a further degree to 27 degrees centigrade. Wind is also slightly picking up as we go deeper into the British afternoon, and with that in mind, could it be the right time to make a pit stop, get some space on the circuit and go on the offensive? Well, Lodge will be the first driver to really confirm that for our top 15 drivers, because it is the case he may just find himself gaining. But meanwhile, speaking of gaining, this is Chris Hack, who's just found his way into P3 ahead of Daniel Austin's, but it's the case that Austin's is going to try and come back. Daryl Young looks the inside into the final corner, and as they roll the way on in here, well, it is the case that Daryl Young not able to get the move done, but he's definitely looking for it as they head up towards turn number 1, and as they charge all the way out towards the first corner. No change now, or is it Daryl Young thinks about it, but he doesn't go for it. Further back, however, that is Lehtinen Austin, who's been passed by Marcus Fox. How did that happen? Let's find out. was making their way up towards what was the Melbourne hairpin here, and you can see that Lehtinen Austin on the outside. I don't think he expected Marcus Fox to go for it. He left the door wide open, to be fair. Was he just looking for a cutback potentially as part of his defense? We're so Marcus Fox covered it off very nicely, and as they made the way up towards Goddard's here, no way back for Lehtinen Austin. I wonder if Lehtinen Austin is getting ready to pit, because he did not defend that too hard, and I think now he's fallen away from Lehtinen Racing in the form of what is Zachary Lehtinen. It is a case that they are now breaking away, but I say that we come back to our live pictures, and immediately Lehtinen Austin going back on the offensive through turns 6 and 7, outside to inside, but here comes Fox once again, and Marcus Fox, well, he's unleashing the beast. It is the Honda as they roll their way through the right-hander of Coppis, through on the inside there. Great racing respect shown between the two of them, and a brilliant time for us to come back to the live pictures. They make the way down towards the S's here, and Marcus Fox right now in P7. I think his mind will be focusing on the fact that it may not be P7 for long before Lehtinen Austin has another go at it as they make their way up towards Melbourne. As they make their way into the braking zone this time around, Lehtinen Austin on the inside here. Fox gives him the space, but much like Lehtinen Austin on the previous lap, in this case Marcus Fox that goes deep and looks to run out the corner. He can't quite find it, but we ride on board here with the 1-2-3 drivers. They head into the final corner for what is now the 32nd time of asking, and as they roll the way through the left-hander here, it'll be interesting to see what we see either of them peeling. No, they both stay on out there. It's a short run to the pit lane, to be fair, so they would have to really give a clear sign they're coming on in. They'd essentially have to hug the inside line on the exit of the final corner as they make their way into turn number 1 this time. You can definitely see Marcus Fox right now feeling racy, and this is releasing when it's Zachary Lehtinen up into P6 and letting him run away with things. He's now the best part of what is 4 seconds up the road as they make the way down to the old hairpin, and as they roll the way into the right-hander this time around, the random racing driver Marcus Fox definitely not close enough to look for the move in the run up towards McLean's corner. At the same time, I think he's taking a bit of a breather, setting the car back down, and he'll go for the move once again in short order. As they make the way up towards Coppis, in fact, getting a bit wrong there on the exit of turn number 7, losing a bit of speed, and well, perhaps it's the case the Honda driver he's bitten off a bit more than he can chew at this point in terms of trying to extract pace out the car. Of course, got to be careful. The race is won at the checker flag. It's not won in the opening hour, but of course Marcus Fox, much like many here, will be very aware of that, no doubt about it. As they come charging on through the S's, you can see there just the suspension of the random racing NSX bouncing just shows you how aggressively they are taking those curbs as they roll the way into the corner. And oh goodness me, now what on earth has happened here? We've got a car pointing the wrong way, and I think there's been a bit of a coming together between P22 down to P25. We take a look back. This was only moments ago, and in particular we focused on Ricardo Mcking here, who at the time was running in, as we're to understand it, I think he was running in P21, and as they made the way into the braking zone here, well, there was Denise Pope on the inside, a bit of contact between the two of them. Camera angle would suggest Pope dived down the inside there, but perhaps there's more to it than meets the eye, but indeed Pope and Mcking coming together, Pope carrying on after that contact. In fact, that was not Pope on circuit, my apologies, that was Dan Hodgson. We're getting the wrong person there. That was Dan Hodgson in that contact, not Denise Pope, and Hodgson in the end making contact with what was our driver of Mcking, and that was very unfortunate between the two of them. But the one driver who gained from all that in terms of fortune was Jan Barr from the Advisor Race Team Machine, the 935 car now to P22, but just simply siphoned its way through the instance. And we can see that Hodgson, Winkler and Still have all had their pit stop so far, and well, you may be wondering at this point, what about a driver who pitted earlier and decided to take that pit stop while our top drivers, well indeed Hodgson has taken over the car from what was Josh Lodge, and that incident has cost them very dearly as we now continue to focus here on the bottom end of the top 20, and Denise Pope running in P20 at this time. Well, in fact, running in P20, my apologies, and charging up towards turn number 1 with Mike Landrift behind as they make the way into the first corner. But behind them, you can see how it is the case in the battle for P3 in the BMW M2 class. We still have Mikhail Jambu and what is behind him there, Joshua Vanstone, running nose to tail in the battle for P3 in the M2 class. They have not left one another at all in this race, much like our leaders in the class of Nunes and Sharp. In this case, they're still running within a second of one another. Absolutely thrilling between these guys for the simple reason that one mistake could really define how the race changes in complexity between them, as we see more of our GT3s coming through, and that is coming up the inside there. Chris Hack on the inside of Jambu into turn 6, and now Daniel Austin has just said, well, if you can go to the inside of Jambu, I'll go around the outside. And our battle for the top 3 will Also, the final spot in the top three, we should say, in the GT3 class, just making its way past those two BMW's M2s as if they were stationary. But to be fair, that's not to be discrediting our BMW M2 drivers. They are moving, but it is the case our GT3 drivers, they're absolutely flying on through. No hesitation, to be fair. It was almost as if that was rehearsed. I can assure you it was not rehearsed, but that was absolutely precision driving from everybody there. And right now, Chris Hackz definitely trying to unleash the beast of that Porsche as they make their way out of the final corner very shortly and on towards another lap. But before he does, coming out of Melbourne, it's the case that Austin's, if anything, seems to be falling backwards a little bit to Daryl Young behind. And as they make their way through the final corner, it is the case that the 413 driver at this point still well within arm's reach of a top three finish, but it is the case, I think, feeling more pressure from behind than needing to put pressure on the driver in front as they head on to another lap. As they roll their way through the right-hander here, we look from them for the battle for P18. This is Cornelius Philbinger who's leading this battle, but behind him you can see you've got the distinct GG and McLaren 720S as being driven there by Chris McKenna, but the Team Vispa driver at this point under continued pressure as they make their way up the hill. They're not too far off the back of Carl Van Horn, who's running in P17 either, as they make their way on up, but as they roll their way through the right-hander of McLean's, it is a case of Philbinger under pressure. I think McKenna's going to look to the inside here, into turn number 8, into Coppis he runs up the inside, and as we look to the helicam, it is the case that McKenna gets the move done, and Philbinger in fact going very deep into the corner and having to recover the car. And could we potentially see here also what would be a move from Pope, looking to try and go up the inside? Can Pope get the move done? No, it's the case that Pope has to wait and will be looking for the run all the way out towards Melbourne, but takes a bit of grass instead. I think Philbinger will be safe into the penultimate corner this time around. As they roll the way on through here, we can see Landreth also closing up a little bit, just a bit further back, as our helicopter just hovers over the top of our drivers, making their way in towards the final corner. And as they roll the way on through, Landreth from Ember Racing also trying to stay in the hunt for a top 20 finish. As they unwind themselves out to the final corner and head on towards lap number 36, we can see just behind, well, your eyes do not deceive you, those are our third and fourth drivers behind of what is Chris Hackz and Daniel Austins. And we've also got Daryl Young in the mix here as our Audi driver in P5 looks to try and get a little bit closer to Austins, just put a little bit more pressure on. Indeed, puts a bit more pressure on himself. They're going a bit deep out of turn number 1, almost unsettling the car, but he brings it back together. A good catch there from our Audi driver, and Daryl Young, to be fair, no stranger to catching the car when it almost goes completely off circuit. If anybody remembers, of course, season 1 at Kyalami, I think it was the case in the end. Daryl Young spent more time on camera putting the car sideways and giving me a heart attack than it was the case pointing in a straight line. But to be fair, he kept it well out of trouble each and every time. And speaking of trouble, that's Simon Still going a bit off circuit there, and I think that may be the case to try and let all of our lead drivers on through and not lose himself too much time on being involved in an incident. Hasn't been a happy race for Simon Still so far, to be fair. But speaking of happy races, well, Chris Black has come into the pit lane, and as we see him making his way down the pit lane here, the Blacksmith Racing at Porsche 991 making its way along into its pit box. It's been a solid first stint. We'll have to wait and see where they come out once they leave their pit box, and right now they're going to drop a long way down the order, and really the target right now is to come out ahead of this man, Dan Hodgson, who the Durham University racing driver, having taken over the car from Josh Lodge, of course involved in that instant in the run down towards what was at the penultimate corner, in contact with, if my memory serves me correctly, Ricardo Mcking at the time. And again, we did confuse them because the colour schemes on the cars are quite similar, with the Denise Pope machine being driven, of course, by Denise Pope, the La Pope machine for Wild Wings Racing. It is the case that Dan Hodgson then being a bit of mistaken identity, but down in P23, and I think Chris Black is going to jump ahead. And in fact, as they make their way on out of the pit lane, we look to the helicam here, and Black's going to be held on out very shortly, but who's he going to come out by? Well, that was Marcus Fox, who's a lap up on Chris Black as he makes his way on out. He's coming out in P21 ahead of Jan Barth and also Dan Hodgson. So this is a game for Black, and to be fair now, he's the target driver that everybody who ahead of him pits will want to beat, for the fact that he is our highest placed driver who's taken his mandatory stop. Now, will he be going to the end? That is the question. He could do it, to be fair. We've got just under 90 minutes of racing to go, plus the final lap. It is technically feasible, although he's going to have to do quite a bit of fuel saving to get to the end on a single tank of fuel. And also on top of that, be able to protect those tyres for that long. So I think we do have quite a few two-stops on the cards here today, and I think our drivers who are pitting at the moment are leaning more towards that two-stop. Our drivers who are going for the potential one-stop, well, that'll be the case. They'll be looking to run a stint of about 70 minutes to start with, and 70 minutes once again as we get a face full of a blue flag there. A bit unfortunate, but it is the case that Chris Black in P21 there. I thought it was the case that the broadcast had a bit of a blue screen. They had a bit of a heart attack, but the Blacksmith Racing driver now is going to not have a heart attack. Instead, he's going to have his heart set on going hunting after places. He's got to gain now. He's got to push on. These next few laps are going to be equivalent of qualifying laps, because if he does not deliver them, he could lose out in the strategy stakes. As he makes his way up towards the final corner here, it is the case that Chris Black definitely right now on the hunt, but first he's got to cut his way between the leaders in the BMW M2 class, and indeed he does in very rapid order. We're hearing that Simon Still has picked up a drive-through penalty for automated track limits, and it is the case that Still will be in the pit soon to serve that drive-through. In fact, he's already in, as I can see in the rear of the pitch when I look out my commentary box window. Not a happy day for the Honda driver. But as we look from our GT3s to our race leader in the M2 class, we can see here Kieran Sharp making his way down through the crane of curves gradually, and as he does have Jan Barth between himself and Alex Nunes behind. These two still separated by 1 second. Would you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? Minus when they've had to negotiate the traffic. These two, since the start of the race, have not had more than 1 second between them, and we are over almost an hour into this race now, and it has just continued to show between how close it is and how much they're pushing one another. And well, Nunes, of course, started on pole with that brilliant pole lap. He lost the place about 20 minutes ago, but the Rapid Drivers Club driver is not letting it go as they roll their way through Coppice once again. And as they come through, we do see there a disqualification for Simon Still. That is very unfortunate. I'm not exactly sure what's happened there, but it does seem as though it's still with that disqualification. It is the case his race will be coming to a close, and an abrupt one at that. Perhaps something has gone wrong in the pit lane, but still we focus here on our battle for the lead of the M2 class right now, and nothing between these two. Meanwhile, the battle for P3 in the class, I can see that Vanstone has got ahead of Mikhail Jambu. In this case, the two of them exchange places, and the gap between the two of them is 5 seconds. And I'm hearing in my ear there was an off-track for Michael Jambu on the previous lap, in fact, and that's what's enabled the podium sim racing driver of Joshua Vanstone to jump up into P3 in the BMW M2 class, but still a long way to go. And, well, the overall direction of travel would state that Jambu will be coming back for this P3 position later on. Not to discredit Vanstone, the two of them have been so close on pace, but it does seem as though Jambu's just had an extra tenth a lap by comparison, and Vanstone right now will be very aware of that and know that a mistake could be very costly, as there is Jambu, and where you can see the damage on the front of the car, I think where it's been on a bit of an off-track adventure, and the Frenchman right now head down, getting back on with it, and definitely trying to deliver more laps. But as he makes his way up towards the final corner here, we do make our way a little bit further down the BMW M2 class to Evan Latafas here, running in at P5 in the Wild Things Racing M2. And the Greek driver with a comfortable advantage over P6 driver Nathan Berry here for Fresh Sim Racing, as right now Berry trying to keep Alex Smith behind him. Well, it is the case, running P6 in the class. Alex Smith, by comparison, making his way down through the crane of curves right now in P7. And then last but not least, in our M2s as it currently stand, is Just Luna. And we can see Luna here having already taken a pit stop. He's cleared one stop. I suspect he'll have another stop on the cards, running last but not least in the BMW M2s, and has not had the race he's wanted so far, and trying to make a recovery out of it. But as time wears on, of course, and we look from our M2 drivers now a little bit further back up the order, and in particular to our GT3 leader here of Harry Phillips, who right now it just seems there's nothing to stop Harry Phillips from leading up front and trying to run away with the proceedings. But of course, we do have that big question of how will the pit stops go. But I think we are now starting to see a lot of drivers trying to move into one-stop territory here, and I think anybody from this point who pits is on the boundary of the one-stop, and if they go an extra, what will be 10 minutes in or close to 10 minutes in, that's when we'll start to see what is the one-stop driver shining on through. But speaking of somebody shining on through right now, it is P2 driver Patrick Sedaka here, the Wild Things Racing Sedaka division driver from Germany, who's put in the fastest lap of the race quite recently, a 27.277 right now. It is the case, the Audi R8 driver definitely trying to put the pressure on his teammate but rival as they make their way up into the final corner. And I think we could potentially see a switch around in terms of the places in the pits if the strategies are not completely aligned. Now, the reason we say that, of course, is because Sedaka was leading by a considerable margin at Spa Francorchamps, as many of you will remember 2 weeks ago, right up there at the head of the field, about 8 seconds clear of what was at the time Sakari Lehtinen. And it was the case that after the pit stops, through a much longer stop for Sedaka versus was Lehtinen, we saw that completely turn around. And in the end, Sedaka what looked to be a guaranteed win for him, ended up being at that P2 position, and I think was scratching his head as to exactly what had happened. So does he have his ace up his sleeve today in terms of that strategy that he can use against Harry Phillips? That'll be what's on Phillips' mind, of course, because whilst they practice as a team, of course they all want to win it. And as we look from them to Marcus Fox here, well, they're not officially a part of the same team, but the two Honda drivers here running nose to tail, and as they make their way down the hill in towards turn number 4, I can tell you that right now, Lehtinen once again finds Marcus Fox right there on his 6. Now, here's the interesting thing about Marcus Fox. He's showing time and time again he's got the pace to beat with Lehtinen, but it just seems as though he's not pushing it as hard. Now, is it the case that Lehtinen's starting to feel the bite in terms of pace, and indeed the car's starting to go away from him with tyre wear, where he's had to push quite hard, particularly in making his way past, say, Leighton Austin? That's one theory, but I wonder whether it's the case that also Marcus Fox has been holding back a little bit of pace, doing a little bit of fuel saving here and there, and is now starting to really unleash what's at the top end of that Honda NSX, because Lehtinen is not breaking away from him. In fact, if anything, Marcus Fox has closed up and is really now starting to look to be the stronger of the two drivers. In fact, he's going to go very late on the brakes here into what is Melbourne, but then has to stop the car in apex because of the fact they do have one of the M2s in front of them, but that was a very late lunge to the inside. Lehtinen gave him the space, to be fair, and I think Fox in the end thought he had it done, and then he found a faceful of what was the Sim Racing Collective BMW M2, which meant that he couldn't carry through with the move. As they make their way up towards turn 1 this time around, of course, Marcus Fox, I think if you needed a message to be sent there that he's going for the position, he feels as though he's faster, that is the message, because that was a very calculated dive to the inside. And to be fair, the random racing driver, we know he can race very well. An absolute sportsman is the Austrian, and well, that was definitely sending the message as they roll the way out through the old hairpin. But as they do and head up towards McLean's once again by Starkeys, it is the case. These two, I suspect we could have a pit stop on the card to one of them soon, and it may be Lehtinen in particular who may try and use track position to trigger an undercut pit stop and take away any advantage Marcus Fox has to pit first out of the two of them. But of course Fox there a little bit unsettled through McLean's, taking a bit too much apex curb, and that rear right tyre in particular dropping off the curb and unsettling the car. Could we see Marcus Fox potentially jump the gun here and instead make his way into the pits first and try to go for that undercut? A lot of strategic faults here on the mind of our drivers, of course, as the time continues to wear down in front of them. They make their way through, and Fox finding that traffic at the worst possible time, in fact, as that was just in front of him. That was Alex Smith who he got caught behind, but now he has cleared Alex Smith and makes his way back up to speed through the Melbourne hairpin. As he makes his way on around here, we do look from him to what is a little bit further up the road, Sander Jacobs here, and Jacobs right now stuck behind Browse as we jump on board with the McLaren 720S driver from the Netherlands to the Dutch Endurance Team Blue outfit. And as they make the way through, you can see their Browse with the oversteer through Coppice. It's the case that Audi, I think, started to feel the pain on the tyres as they make the way up towards the S's, and Jacobs looks the inside here, but of course rolling his way on free. He's not going to make the move from that far back, but he's definitely shown a lot more confidence in the McLaren. And the one thing we do know, of course, with this McLaren, when it's hooked up, it is absolutely deadly fast. It is a missile as far as sweeping circuits are concerned, and right now this McLaren is definitely on a charge. But as they roll the way up towards turn number 12 here, up into Gollards once again with an hour 20 still on the clock, it is the case that Jacobs staying right with his rival. Will we see a peeling to the pits? No, they both stay on out as they head on to another lap. But heading up towards turn number 1 here, Jacobs right now setting some personal bests in terms of laps compared to where the pace has been over the last 20 minutes, and heading through into Red Gate Corner. Well, there's a bit deep there, and I think in that dirty air, it is the case just falling a little bit foul of the braking zone into turn 1, and that's the downside of the McLaren 720S. It's very reliant on its aero package in order to gain that lap time. When you're in that dirty air of another GT3 in front, it becomes very sensitive to the pickup of the dirty air, but he's had a really good run for the old hairpin. This could be an attempt of a move into McLean's. He's going to have to look to the inside. It's going to be a dive at last move. He's going for it. No, he backs off. Jacobs waits here. Will he go for it in Coppice? I don't think so. I don't think he's close up. He didn't have the rotation through McLean's. Again, that dirty air just going back to spite the front end of the McLaren. And as they roll the way through the right hand, here you can see Browse right on the limit there. Those rear tyres just offering enough grip for him to keep the throttle buried, but Browse right now definitely running on the very edge, and Jacobs trying to stay with him as they make the way into the S's this time around. But as they roll the way on through here, look into the helicam, there's nothing between the two of them as they head up towards Melbourne once more. And as they roll the way into the braking zone, they do have one of the BMW M2s going a little bit slowly through the corner. I think that's used Luna there, but we can see Jacobs gets a much tighter exit out of the hairpin. Meanwhile, Browse goes a bit deep, but Browse, to be fair, now has the run up towards Goddard's, and you can see Jacobs cuts the inside immediately, and Luna, to be fair, keeps the door open, and Jacobs gets very close there in the run out of the corner now as they head up towards turn 1 this time. I think Jacobs feels as though he's got to get the move done now whilst he's this close and the pressure is on Browse, because if Browse can settle down again, then he will feel safe and comfortable. And as they roll the way through turn 1, both drivers there take to the grass briefly, and Jacobs right behind his rivals. They head down the hill past the stationary camera on the crane. Occurs a lovely camera position, and as they make the way in towards turn 4, it is the case that Jacobs right now there, he's just not got that final tenth he needs to try and affect the pass, but you can see as they come out the old hairpin, the momentum he's got up their hill by comparison with Browse is absolutely astonishing. But the problem is Browse can just put the car on the apex at McLean's, and there's nothing that Jacobs can do. And again, coming out of what is Coppice corner here, they roll the way out to the right hander, but look how close Jacobs is this time. Browse has not been able to bury the throttle, and as they make the way down towards the S's, surely Jacobs is going to look for the move here. He looks to the inside, it's going to be late on the brakes if he goes for it. No, he waits once again, so close between them. And as they make the way out to the corner here, the McLaren driver gets ever close in the run towards Melbourne, the closest he's been for some time. They head on the brakes, no way through, he has to wait, but they've got a lot of traffic. Oh, goodness me, and it's a tap to the rear of Browse's car from Jacobs there as they come up behind the TSRC BMW M2. I think both drivers there trying to be a bit cautious, but Jacobs not finding that caution as much. And as they roll the way through the final corner once more, it is the case that tap may cost them a bit of time in the pits in terms of repair work to the car as they head to another lap. But as they do, close between the pair of them. Meanwhile, a bit further up the road, we do see a rather lonesome BMW Sim Racing Ahmet Sadek Kogulu, of course, the Turkish driver here, rolling his way around in P9 right now. I think just trying to deliver those laps and stay out of trouble as he heads up towards McLean's corner through Starkeys, but running a solid race here. But looking further down the field by comparison, one driver who is on a bit of a charge right now, and here's another one of our McLaren drivers. It is, of course, Chris McKenna here, the distinct GG driver, having found his way past Denise Pope. It is the case now trying to make his way after Van Horn, who's in P16 and only a second up the road. But as they come charging on up into the braking zone here for the final corner, it does look as though staying where he is for the time being. Of course, Van Horn in the Aston Martin, you can see here at the front of your camera now as they make the way towards turn 1. Marcus Fox between them. Marcus Fox running in P7. Here's the Honda NSX driver there, a lap ahead of these guys. And as they roll the way on through the turn 1 apex at this point, I think it is the case we can also see that Evan Latafas and the Wild Things Racing M2 staying well clear and trying to let the traffic on through. The GT3s come roaring on through. It is the case everyone being cognizant of where the other members of the traffic jam are out on circuit, and as they roll the way on through at this point, we can see it is the case a little bit further up. In fact, the move has been done here for what is P11 between Jacobs and Browers, and Jacobs is going to cover off the inside into Goddard's, and I think he's got it done. Let's take a look back at exactly what happened. It was in the run through the S's, and was it the case that this time Jacobs had the better exit? He did, and as they made the way up towards Melbourne, well, the door was left open and Jacobs said, right, I'm going all in on it at this point, and he made the move up the inside. And well, Florian Browse, to be fair, I think was expecting a move to come, and therefore he perhaps didn't put up as much of defence as perhaps he would have at this point in the race if it had been a bit later, or he really felt as though Jacobs was having to give it everything to make the move. But Browse loses the place, and now Sander Jacobs up into P11, but Richard Pixley behind. Remember earlier we talked about Pixley having to make a recovery race. He's up to P13. He's right behind Browse, who gets it wrong there into McLean's, and Pixley gains another place. As we've also got there what is Ricardo Mcking off circuit on the exit of McLean's. He's a lap down, and he rejoins with Ticehurst just behind this group, and Ticehurst is in P14. Remember, Ticehurst started from the pit lane, so it is the case. It's all happening right now. Mike Landreth into the pit lane, P21. We've also got Austins who's come into the pits from P4 at the time, so I had to wait to see where Austins comes out in all of the mix, and that is, of course, Daniel Austins, not to be confused with Lehtinen Austin, who's in P8 right now, but Austin's in the pit lane, and well, he has cleared his mandatory stop. Now, we're not expecting him to make a second stop here today, definitely not in that Aston Martin. As we look to the helicam here, where will he come out? It is the case in P8 currently. Where is Kargulu? There goes Kargulu, so he moves into P8, does the Turkish driver. So Austin's comes out P9, and behind him, that is, I believe that's not Chris Davies, or is it, as they make the way through? Well, as they make the way down the hill, that's not Chris Davies. There is Chris Davies, the Quantum Racing team driver in P10. So Austin's, I think, has timed that pit stop to perfection. He's got clear space out in front of him on track. Kargulu, to be fair, running about 3-4 seconds up the road. As we see another response, it's Patrick Sedaka into the pit lane, in from P2. It is the case the pit stops are coming in now. Ticehurst in for what is his scheduled stop as well. I think the tyres are feeling the pinch on the number of cars. We've also got Daryl Young into the pits. Everybody now starting to look at that pit stop. Meanwhile, with Ticehurst in the pit lane, Colin Conde gains another place as the off-pace motorsports driver as he rolls his way on through. We do have to keep in mind, of course, there are plenty of pit stops still on the field. And remember, you can keep track of that in the time tower. If they've got a green rectangle next to their name, it means they've cleared that mandatory stop. They've been to the pits at least once. If they've got an orange rectangle with a number 1 in, it means there's still a stop on the cards. But speaking of pit stops, we've also got where's Marcus Fox into the pits. Meanwhile, Sakari Lehtinen has stayed out. And I think Marcus Fox has revealed his hand. As meanwhile, we look up to the pit lane here. So Marcus Fox in particular, and well, Sedaka has just left the pit lane. He returns to circuit P5 behind Lehtinen Austin, and Lehtinen Austin staying out a long time here in the Quantum Racing team. What is at BMW M4, and Sedaka, I think at this point will be feeling as though he didn't want to get a face full of traffic here in the Formula driver who's yet to pit. But where is Daniel Austin's? Here is Daniel Austin's, and well, in terms of where he's come back out, he has come out in P6, which means he has jumped back ahead of Daryl Young and also what is Marcus Fox. But the thing for the AMR Daniel Sim Racing driver now is the fact that he's got to worry not about Chris Davies necessarily, but instead he's got to worry about the charge from behind of what is eventually Young and Fox. They make the one around. But conversely, Harry Phillips is into the pit lane for the lead of the race, which means we now do have a new race leader in the form of this man, Chris Hack from Wild Wings Racing. Here as he makes his way down the hill towards turn number 4. We've got a drive-through penalty for track limits, I believe, for where's Cornelius Philbinger. Unfortunate for the Bentley driver there, but Chris Hack right now leads this race. He'll be leading it for a couple of laps until he pits, but I can imagine Harry Phillips will return to the lead afterwards, but we'll have to wait and find out. We've also got Lehtinen into the pit lane. Now he's coming in. They're all in their boxes right now. Harry Phillips leaving his pit box. Now I would presume here that Phillips is coming back out in the lead of this race. I would not expect him to lose the lead in terms of, unless Chris Hack has done a huge amount of work on an undercut here, or what is effectively now an overcut strategy for Chris Hack. Well, where else is happening? We see Lehtinen still in his pit box here. Meanwhile, Sedaka has come out, and well, he's in P3 now. What about Daniel Austin's? He makes his way on through here. So it's the case that Daniel Austin's charges up towards turn number 1. So Daniel Austin's effectively, as we would understand it, running P3, P4, depending on how it goes for Chris Hack. The question is, however, what about Lehtinen? As we see there coming through, that was Richard Pixley coming on through, and what about the rest? Behind him, that is Daryl Young, and Lehtinen has jumped ahead of Daryl Young in the run out of the pit lane, and that is effectively, as we're to understand it, what is now P4, P5 for the Finnish driver here, the Team Honda Racing, the Tina Racing driver right now, delivering a brilliant job there. And as they make the way through the old hairpin this time, Lehtinen Racing have gained places left, right and centre through the pit stops as they make the way up the hill towards turn number 7. But it may be the case the Honda has not had the one lap pace, but it's definitely got the strategy and it's got the minds behind the car. And right now Sakiri will be charging to hold off Daryl Young for the remainder here. As Daryl Young, you could see immediately, look at the way he's approaching Coppers. The Audi driver here is immediately going the offensive. He knows he's got warmer tyres right now, and he has to use them before that Honda gets those tyres up to temperature. As they make the way into the S's this time around, charging on through. The question is, where will Chris Hack come into all of this? Given the fact that Hack was leading, he's cleared his pit stop already. And in fact, as Chris Hack makes his way out of the pit lane from what we're gathering, here is Daniel Austin's. Now, where is Chris Hack in all of this? Well, Austin's making his way up towards turn number 1. I think Chris Hack's taken the place. He has. Chris Hack has jumped back out in P3. So it is the case when our time tower updates, it is Harry Phillips who leads, Patrick Sedaka in P2, Chris Hack P3, and then Daniel Austin's in P4. But the thing for Hack and Austin's is they've jumped miles ahead of what is Lehtinen and Daryl Young. They've just completely jumped them by comparison. Meanwhile, absolute shock horror moment right now. Marcus Fox, well, he's had his pit stop and he's now all the way down in P8, and he's a long way off the battle between Young and Lehtinen. We've also got Chris Davies into the pit lane. He's going to be coming back out a little bit later, we believe around the P11, P12 margin, but it is all up in the air right now. We are seeing a number of drivers gaining massively through pit stops, but a huge number are losing out here in the pit window. Marcus Fox has lost out quite considerably, all things considered here. And meanwhile, what about Leighton Austin? Well, he's come out, and well, it's critical for Leighton Austin because he has come right out in front of a fast charging McLaren behind him there. And that is, unless I'm very much mistaken, I believe that is Jacobs. Although, to be fair, Jacobs is in the pit lane, so that can't be Jacobs. So I think that might be Denise Pope behind him. But Leighton Austin has returned in P9, but he's lost out in the hunt versus Marcus Fox and also Lehtinen and Daryl Young. But as they come charge up the hill here, Leighton Austin just focusing on one thing right now, and that's bringing the car to the end. Cargulu, by comparison, now down to P10. But to be fair, he's still gaining overall time here, and Cargulu's moved up into the top 10 through the pit stops. It's looking very nice for him over the remainder, and you can see there Chris Black, who went for quite the undercut by comparison, and we're a bit 50-50 whether Black might be making it to the end on a two-stop strategy here, while on the run stop, I suspect he's going to try and go all the way on this one stop. In this case, rolling his way through Coppets right now. He's in P11. He's jumped ahead of the Quantum Racing Team machine, which is now being piloted by Alex Rowe, the Quantum Racing Team Aston Martin Racing machine at the V8 Vantage. And it is the case, we do have Alex Rowe here, the team manager, deciding to get behind the wheel as they charge through Coppets here, and well, making his way down towards the S's. The number 15 driver at this point knows that if he wants to try and take that P11, he's got a 12-second gap to cut down, and he's going to have to do it fast, because we've just got over an hour left of racing here at Donington Park near Castle Donington in Leicestershire in England. And it is the case that the strategies are almost complete, and then we're waiting for the remainder of the racing to unfold. But speaking of that racing unfolding, we see it is the case that Marcus Fox into the pit lane once again, and it's gone wrong for Fox. We don't know what's happened, but it's a double stop, and he's going to lose out catastrophically here. Meanwhile, Richard Pixley, well, in a drive, we just seen him drop all the way to the back of the field and had to fight his way all the way back up. He has fought his way back into P10 already, and as he makes his way through turn number 1 here, he's caught behind what is one of the Wild Things Racing at Porsche machines, and unless I'm mistaken, I think that is Harry Phillips, who's just in front of him, a lap ahead right now. I think Richard Pixley at this point will be thinking to himself, that should be me leading, or right up there with the leader, not a lap down. But still, Pixley doing everything he can to recover in this one, and he's recovered to P10 already. Such is the pace he's been delivering lap after lap and not giving in. But as he rolls his way out of there, McLean's and up towards Coppets Corner this time around. In this case, we look a bit further back, and Marcus Fox still in the pit lane. This pit stop is never ending. Well, he's finally leaving the pit lane, but it's cost him, and it's cost him massively. He's dropped out the top 10. He's all the way down in P17. And as Denise Pope comes on through to go up into P18 there, ahead of what is Jan Barth, who's in the pit lane right now. It is the case, the Britain for Wild Things Racing here, despite the difficulties, the number 79 driver charging on inside the top 20 with just over an hour remaining. But with all the pit stops mostly complete in the GT3 class, we need to come to the BMW M2 class, and we have a new M2 class leader, given the fact they've yet to pit, and that is Podium Sim Racing's Joshua Vanstone here, who is leading right now. Has a pit stop still on the cards to take, but Vanstone trying to go the longest of everybody here in the class, and trying to stay out of trouble and just get that track time in order to deliver those laps before coming on in. But with Vanstone rolling through, what about in the battle for what will be the effective leaders? We're to understand it once Vanstone comes on in. Well, it is the case that Alex Nunes having a shorter pit stop by comparison in the Rapid Drivers Club machine. He is now ahead of the Sim Racing Collective machine, as now being piloted by Andrew Pike. It is the case that Andrew Pike is now behind the wheel, taking over from Kieran Sharp. Alex Nunes has jumped ahead of them, and the gap is 3.6 seconds in that battle. Vanstone's into the pit lane, so we will expect Vanstone to drop back behind these guys, potentially in P3. We'll have to wait and see how that battle goes between them. But right now, Pike definitely trying to chase after Nunes to make it a Sim Racing Collective double podium, if of course it is the case that Schattler can get into that P3 position. But here is Anthony Schattler from the Sim Racing Collective team right now, rolling his way through what is the old hairpin, a long way behind Vanstone. I think it may be the case here they're going to have to settle for P4. That car has been in the woods. You can see the damage on the front bumper there, and as they make the way through at McLean's Corner right now, well, Vanstone in the pit lane being serviced, and I think that pit stop is almost complete. Well, it's not going to be too much longer, and when Vanstone's completed that pit stop, I think the Shuttler's got it all to do to the end of the race. In fact, Vanstone has cleared his stop, making his way out of the pit lane right now, so the Shuttler's got a lot to do now in terms of time cut down if he wants to be able to make it a Sim Racing Collective P2, P3 or a P1, P3 on that podium. But still an hour to go. It's not over until the checker flag is waved and they cross it. Anything can happen in motorsport. But meanwhile, speaking of anything that can happen, we see Dan Hodgson from West Durham University Racing Team returning to the circuit there. What happened to the McLaren driver? This was only moments ago, and well, making his way into turn number 1 here. Does the car just simply understeer a little bit deep into the corner? Looks hooked up there on initial apex, and there's a bit of understeer that creeps in, and the car on the grass there, and eventually returning, albeit much later on in the run down the hill. And well, that was very unfortunate there for what was our McLaren driver, and in the end bring it back onto circuit as he rolled his way down through the second part of the Craner curves, but indeed not the happiest of days for the Durham University team, as now we return to live pictures running P23 and knowing they've got a lot to do if they want to try and get inside the top 20. But as they roll the way through, it is the case. Charging up towards Melbourne, we look from them to our leader in the GT3 class of Harry Phillips here, leading by an advantage now of 13.7 seconds over Patrick Sedaka. And right now Harry Phillips looking unstoppable, it must be said. But of course, we'll wait and see as he makes his way out of the final corner and on towards what will be lap number 56. And where is Patrick Sedaka for comparison? He's making his way up towards the final corner right now. That is how pronounced the gap is as he makes his way past Scott Ticehurst there. Scott Ticehurst running in what is P11, but you can definitely see how our leader's just running in a different class of pace right now. And well, that pace really starting to show when our leaders are lapping up to P11. But as we do see Chris Black here having a bit of an off track at what is the old hairpin. That coming through is, well, that is not Richard Pixley, is it not? No, it's not Richard Pixley coming on through. I believe that's Harry Phillips, in fact, making his way on through. But Chris Black having a bit of a moment, and well, he won't want to make that moment again in a hurry, given the fact he's 1.5 seconds off of the back of Amit Sedaka-Gulu, the P8 driver in the BMW M4. Now he's going to find himself at least 5 to 6 seconds off of the M4 driver as he tries to bring himself back up to speed. But as they roll the way on out here, it is the case. You can see just keeping it together as they make their way up into the S's. As they roll the way on through at this point, it is the case that we look from them to a little bit further down the order, and in particular to Sebastian Winkler here, the Bentley driver in the K-Pax Racing by Zero Esports, the German driver rolling in the Bentley Continental, the last star drivers in that top 15, and as he makes his way up the hill into McLean's at this point, chasing after what is in front of him, Fabian Hundhedge, albeit he's all the way up in P14 at 12.5 seconds clear. And speaking of our German driver here from Slow-Mo Racing, in this case the Audi R8 driver here looking good as he rolls on through, chasing after P13 driver Kasbergen as they roll the way up towards Melbourne. But as they come charging down, it is the case, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and then when we get to that hour mark remaining, we'll take you through the order as it currently stands. So with time ticking down and the fact that we do have just over an hour remaining here, we look to our leader Harry Phillips, who as he leads his way through, we start off by covering the GT3 class. And our British driver here leading from the start, taking that pole position. It is the case, the number 26 driver really just charging on right now and looking to put this race off to pasture, off into the distance. And his main rival in P2, Patrick Sedaka here, the Audi R8 Evo 2 driver from Germany for Wild Things Racing, having run the pace with Phillips in qualifying and also in the race so far. The gap 12.5 seconds as it currently stands. It was 13 seconds a moment ago, and we are seeing the lap times for Sedaka being a little bit faster, only by a tenth or two at the moment, but it's not a margin for Harry Phillips to get worried about. I think it is the case, both drivers right now settling into a rhythm, and over the remaining hour, of course, we've got plenty of laps to go in an hour remaining, given the fact we've done almost 57 laps in the space of what is 104 minutes, so we've still got plenty of time on the cars and plenty of laps to go. But Sedaka, the main rival to try and chase down Harry Phillips, and it is the case these two have been running P1, P2 for all of the race. In P3, meanwhile, we have Chris Hackz here, the Wildwings Racing driver, and it looks like they are trying to achieve a Wildwings Racing podium today in the GT3 class. And well, having battled early on with Daniel Ostins and really been battling with him for a long time, it is the case he's managed to find himself up in P3 for an overtake on circuit before the pit stop, and then a rather short stop by comparison, enabling him to jump ahead and maintain a sizable gap. And behind, we can see Daniel Ostins there. And Ostins right now, it must be said, is looking the faster of the two drivers as he makes his way through the right-hander at turn number 1. And the AMR Daniel Sim Racing driver, of course, involved in a couple of near-miss moments at the start of the race, but sitting through turns 1 through to 3 on lap number 1, we did see a little bit of the elbows coming out between Ostins and what was Richard Pixley, and that may be discussed post-race, but to be fair, we're not appropriating blame on either driver. It did look as though it was just a bit hairy coming out of turn number 1, but it is the case. The 413 driver at this point definitely pushing on and chasing after being on that podium. Of course, with the disappointment of Spa Francorchamps, where it all went wrong, the Aston Martin driver here today wanting to be there on the podium, and right now only 2.5 seconds off that opportunity. In P5, meanwhile, it is the case. Qualifying was difficult, but the race has gone much better so far. For Sakari Lehtinen, the Finnish driver representing Lehtinen Racing in collaboration with Team Honda Racing, the Honda NSX driver starting P8 has found his way out to P5 on strategy and just keeping it together. He was under major pressure earlier on from another Honda driver of Marcus Fox, who had a difficult moment in the pit lane when he had to make 2 pit stops rather than 1. It was a blunder by the strategist, and it is the case here. Our flying Finn, who took the win in the first round of this season. Well, he's not on course to potentially take the win here today unless something miraculous were to occur based on the odds as they currently stand, but the Honda driver definitely looking to cement a top 5 finish here. 16 seconds off for Ostins in P4, but comfortably 17 seconds ahead of Daryl Young in P6. Speaking of what is Daryl Young here, it is the case the Audi driver was looking to be in the fight for the top 5 for some time, but a long pit stop in the end has cost him, and well, with that in mind, it is the case that Britain now has got it all to do to try and close up on the top 5 as the time wears down. But however, he has a comfortable advantage of 15 seconds to P7 driver from Quantum Racing Team, Leighton Austin here, who haven't had a solid qualifying session. The BMW M4 driver has not really put a foot wrong, to be fair. The only thing you could argue is there was a little bit of a moment when he was battling with the Honda NSX drivers of Fox and Lehtinen where it didn't work out in terms of where he's trying to place the car to defend, but still the BMW M4 driver has dug deep, and that P7 is going his way with 15.5 second advantage ahead of his fellow BMW driver of BMW Sim Racing's Ahmet Sedaka, the Turkish driver here, charging after Austin, and to be fair, finding a lot of traffic right now, but it will be his aim, no doubt, to try and bring out that P7 home and be the lead BMW driver come the end of this race. But as he heads to the timeline here, Chris Black a bit further behind, only what is about 5 seconds behind as he comes to the timeline, our P9 driver. In fact, he crossed the line 5.7 seconds to be precise behind Karkulu. But the thing about the Blacksmith Racing driver here is it's been a brilliant drive from him so far, and we can't really understate that. Starting outside the top 10, he has used strategy and smart racecraft in order to move up to P9, and he is continuing to chase after Karkulu, and if he plays his cards right, I think he could be within a chance of a P8 come the finish of this one. We'll keep our eyes on that. Meanwhile, completing the top 10, it is Richard Pixley. Now, Richard Pixley is really the underdog story of the night here so far, in the fact that he started on the second row. In a bit of an incident with Daniel Ostins on the open lap at turns 1 through to 3, it was the case that Pixley lost out and fell to the back of the order. Now, you may be thinking, okay, so he's recovered to P10, that's the story. Not quite. Making his way on his recovery, had another knock in the battle for P18, went off circuit, dropped to the back of the field, and he's had to recover twice. And he's recovered to P10, and he has got the pace right now to be lapping with the leaders, arguably, albeit on that lap it was a 29.870, 2 seconds off the leaders, so I think it may be the case he's had a bit of a poor lap. But the point being that Richard Pixley has had to deploy a huge amount of pace here in order to get back into the top 10, and he is now 4 seconds off of Black as they charge up towards Melbourne Corner. Then behind him, Scott Ticehurst, P11, the Audi R8 Evo 2 driver. Starting from the pit lane, the Briton has made his way out to P11 in a race that has seen him involved in quite a few scuffles with other drivers. And, well, it's the case, again, not apportioning blame, but I wouldn't be surprised if he, alongside a number of those drivers in those instances, are called to the stewards' room to discuss verdicts and whatnot. But it is the case the 352 driver has definitely been in the wars, but he's battled his way up to P11. And as he makes his way out the final corner, still plenty to go. Meanwhile, in P12, we do have Peter Kasbergen taking over the Dutch endurance team Blue Machine from, what was it, Sander Jacobs earlier on. And it is the case, finding himself in a battle with the P13 Audi behind of Fabian Hunhege as they make the way through the final corner. And as they roll the way through, you could see there is the case that Kasbergen playing it very smart to defend on the inside and use the BMW M2 in order to cover off his outside line. And behind, we see Hunhege here making his way in P13 for Slow-Mo Racing in this battle. The German driver under that pressure to find the move, and of course these two no strangers to battling one another in terms of the teams as they roll the way down the hill here in towards the old hairpin, but it's going to get very close, and I think we're going to have to pause that run through the order as they make the way into the hairpin this time around, and it's very close. And we can see Alex Nunes now thinking a bit of a moment where he's had to take a few breaths, our BMW M2 class leader, and it's the case none of them are coming together in the end. But to be fair, great respect shown between the drivers as they make their way through the very tight hairpin and heading up towards what is now the corner known as Coppice. But as they charge on through, we look to P14 driver here, Alex Roth, the Quantum Racing team driver from the United Kingdom, taking over the car from his teammate at the pit stop, and he is trying to hold off Sebastian Winkler here, who in P15, the K-Pax Bentley driver, charging after that P14 position, and there is nothing between the two of them right now. And I think it is the case that Roth already been caught in the traffic there with some of our other cars, and as they make their way down towards turn number 9 in towards the S's, Winkler's definitely trying to stay as close as possible as we make the way through. Oh goodness, we had a bit of contact there. Well, I think Winkler would argue that he had the right to come on through, and I think it would be the case. I think that's Hodgson behind the wheel of that McLaren. I think Hodgson would argue it would be a bit silly to go too wide there into the S's, and you should have waited, but that is not the way Winkler would have wanted it to go. He loses out in the hunt for P14 for the time being, but he'll come back, there's no doubt about that. Then in P16 we do have Jordan Cotton here for Off-Pace Motorsports. The Off-Pace team have done quite a good job here today, to be fair, after the difficult day at Spa Francorchamps. They're digging deep right now, and we're hearing there from Calgon UK in the Twitch chat. It is the case that they're running a bit of a different one-stop strategy in terms of having to do some fuel saving, cutting the fuel right down, and right now they're trying to hold off Marcus Fox behind, who's in P17, and trying to gain that P16 off of them as they roll their way through turn number 1 and down the hill they charge. But as they come roaring on down here, you can see just in front it is the case that we do have the scramble for P15 between Winkler, and as they make the way into the old hairpin here, well, Cotton has got a lot of work to do. He's got to try and find his way past P15 driver Winkler, but at the same time keep Fox at bay as they head up the hill, and it's going to be a lot of drivers into one very small space at McLean's as they make it into the braking zone. And you can see there Marcus Fox, he thought about it, but now I think he also thought to himself, given the density of cars here going through at McLean's into Coppice, that's not happening. It's only going to end up with everybody going to the pit lane with damage. And as they make the way out of Coppice, Cotton's going to try and go around the outside here. They head down, of course. Condé will be watching right now, cheering on his fellow driver as they make their way in towards the S's, but Winkler covers him off, and Marcus Fox gets very close. But as they roll the way through the S's this time around, it's no change, but Cotton's still got the momentum. And as we ride on board here with Jordan Cotton making his way down into the penultimate corner, of course, keep your eyes on that rear view mirror in the top of your screen. It will be the case that every so often we may see Marcus Fox appear out of nowhere, but I think he's lost a lot of momentum, in fact, as Marcus Fox coming through the S's, because we've got a BMW behind now. In fact, that's an Audi behind, and that's a lead lap Audi coming on through. So Cotton's going to have to give the space, and it's very awkward here, given the fact you've also got Ricardo Mcking, who's a lap down the whole group of drivers here, wanting to come on through. But you can see a flash of the hazard lights there from what was, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that's Darryl Young saying thank you. And as they roll their way through turn number 1 here, Jordan Cotton, I think at this point will be a bit frustrated because he was looking for the move on Winkler, and now he's going to have to wait a very long time as they come down through the crane. It goes, but as they do, goodness me, what is the case? Going too wide for the crane occurs at that speed. Is hairy enough riding on board, and I can only imagine Jordan Cotton right there was thinking that they did not come together with Hodgson, and in the end it didn't turn out that way. But Jordan Cotton right now definitely taking those bravery pills, and it's showing as he chases after that P15. And right now Winkler's trying to keep Young between them, just for the simple reason he doesn't want to be under that pressure anytime soon, but he's going to have to yield very shortly as they roll their way through Coppice. Those blue flags are waving. It's not Formula 1 flags, to be fair. The lead lap driver is not expecting the driver who's a lap down just to pull out of the way. It is the case the faster driver, or the lead lap driver, is expected to pass in a manner that's safe. They have to take the initiative here, and as they roll their way through the S's, Cotton right now will try and capitalise on the fact that Winkler has now been cleared by Young and will go on the offensive once again. As they roll the one down, you can see Marcus Fox here down in P17, having lost out so much in that run to the S's on the previous lap, and the Austrian driver had to make that double stop due to the strategic error, and it is the case that Fox right now trying to recover to get into the top 15 as they roll their way through the final corner once again. But as they do, we have Denise Pope running in P18 here, the Wild Things Racing driver, and well, Denise Pope, to be fair, having a better race compared to Spa, learning that McLaren 720S and just gradually coming to terms with the car, and it's a stronger performance than Pope. I think this momentum will only carry forward into the next round at Watkins Glen. But meanwhile, we've got some yellow flags on circuit. We've got what is the BMW Sim Racing machine, a Cargulu. Goodness me, that's a whack to the wall for Cargulu. What on earth has happened there? Well, this was only moments ago. We ride on board here with Cargulu. Now, there's a lot of traffic in front, to be fair, as they were making their way down towards what was the S's, and surely there hasn't been contact with one of our M2s. No, over the curb, and the car's bounced, and it's just snapped on it and smashed to the wall there. That is very unfortunate for Cargulu, who was running comfortably at the time in P8, effectively. He's dropped all the way down to P11, and I wonder if it's a visit to the pits. As we return to our live pictures, I look out my commentary box window, and I think the camera's going to pan round to reveal it is a pit stop for Cargulu to repair the car. I think a meatball flag was given, which of course means the car has to come into the pits, and it is the case that Cargulu now is in dire straits with regards to finishing inside the top 10. Meanwhile, Marcus Fox has found his way past Jordan Cotton in the battle for what is P16. Well, we'll have to take a look back at how that happened very shortly. In fact, we are getting a replay. Whereas in the run down towards the S's here now, as they made the way in, and we focus on Jordan Cotton here, who had Mcking go up his inside. Now Mcking trying to unlap himself, and Cotton just going deep into the corner, and I think it will be the case that Cotton won't be too pleased with the fact that Mcking tried to unlap himself into the S's of all places. I mean, it is something you can do, but I think it's the case in the end. The off-pace motorsports team, they're being caught out, and Marcus Fox picking up the pieces as a result, but in not working out. But at the same time, they can now use Fox in order to be able to close up to the drivers in front. I can tell you as well, Sebastian Winkler is into the pits with damage to the car at the same time as Cargulu being involved in that smash to the wall coming out of the S's. It is the case that we've also had Winkler have an off track, which has seen the need to repair the car, so both drivers in the wars. So it is one of those cases whereby Jordan Cotton is back up to P15, but he was hoping he could have brought home that P14, and we can see again, there's Mcking off circuit. I think Cotton will be hoping Mcking doesn't try and find his way through once again into the S's this time as they roll their way on around. But when we look further down the order, well, with everything that's happened, we talked about Denise Pope previously, who's now up to P16 with everything that's happening. And here's Mike Landreth in P17, the Ember Racing driver from the United Kingdom. And it's been a difficult race for Landreth. To be fair, after a difficult start, he has settled back into the race to a degree and is delivering a solid P17 right now. Chris McKenna, P18. He does have Cargulu behind him here, and Cargulu will be looking with a repaired car to go on the offensive as they roll their way through Coppice and up towards the S's here. But the distinct GG driver hasn't quite been on the pace compared to a number of his contemporaries, but to be fair, he has not put a single foot wrong here, and the number 92 driver keeping it sweet and simple as he makes his way into the S's this time around. And I think Cargulu will be trying to carry the momentum out of the corners and head up towards Melbourne to look for the move on the inside as they make their way into the braking zone. And Will McKenna, well, here's what the case is right now, where he's not under too much pressure and does not need to defend. But we look from Cargulu here in P19, of course we talked about earlier, and he had that major moment at the S's only a couple of laps ago. So now a driver who in P20 had a major moment before it even started, of course, Jan Barth from the Advisor Charity Racing Team, the German driver in the 935 car. They joined the circuit in the incorrect order for the two drivers. It is the case that Barth is having to run this race entirely by himself, and they had to miss qualifying, running P20 right now, just keeping out of trouble and delivering lap after lap. And then we have Cornelius Philbinger in P21, of course, for that drive-through penalty a few laps ago. The Team Vispa driver not having a happy day at the office at Donington. And then Christian Winkler after that pit stop, now P22 for the K-Pax Racing by Zero Esports, German driver here. And then we do have Ricardo Mcking, P23, followed by, last but not least, Josh Lodge at P24. And well, the Durham University Racing Team, they were in the top 10 at one point. They pitted very early, and in the end, it has not worked out for them. And to be fair, it was looking to be a brilliant attempt at an undercut strategy, only to find contact with another driver at the Melbourne hairpin within the opening 50 minutes of the race. And well, Lodge today, much like his teammate, they will be thinking about what can they do next time around to turn around those fortunes. Now, as we hear, Winkler's now picked up a drive-through penalty for track limits, which is very unfortunate. That's only going to compound the Bentley drivers' issues. We talked a lot about our GT3s. Let's go for our M2s quickly. it is the case that we do have Alex Nunes here from the Rapid Drivers Club. He is your current BMW M2 class leader. The Portuguese, having started on pole, has been in a back and forth rivalry with the Sim Racing Collective 99 car, which is currently being piloted by Andrew Pike, but has previously been piloted by Kieran Sharp. It is the case that Alex Nunes right now, qualifying on pole, lost the lead of the race after the opening 35 minutes, but never gave in and stayed right there with the Sim Racing Collective machine. The pit stop has seen him jump back ahead. Andrew Pike, meanwhile, behind the wheel of the Sim Racing Collective machine, now 11 seconds off of Nunes and falling backwards gradually. I think there's been an off-track, in fact, for the Sim Racing Collective machine on this lap or the previous laps. They've lost a lot of time, and that's unexpected time loss at that. Then we have Joshua Vanstone running on P3 right now for Podium Sim Racing. The Briton here delivering a very solid race. Wasn't a back and forth battle with the Sim Racing Collective 199 car in the early stages, but that car has fallen behind. And indeed it is the case that Vanstone looking comfortable for that P3 in class now, with Evan Latapas the best of rest in P4 here, the Wild Things Racing driver from Greece, albeit he does have to keep in mind that he does have Anthony Schattler, who is currently only 6.5 seconds back, and Schattler is gradually closing or attempting to close here in the second of the Sim Racing Collective machines, running of course in P5. Then we have Just Luna here, who started right towards the back of the class, had a difficult start to his race, but has recovered to P6, now running in P30 overall, the half-practice hero. Not where he wanted to be given his pace, was on the second row of the BMW M2 grid. And then we have Alex Smith for what is Blacksmith Racing Red, rolling his way there through the old hairpin, running in P7 in the BMW M2 class, and he is clear of Chris Carr here. Last but not least, our BMW M2s on circuit for Fresh Sim Racing, but to be fair, Chris Carr, whilst he's perhaps not been on the pace of his peers all the way through the race, he's definitely not given in and continued to deliver, and that's what it's all about here as he makes his way on around. Speaking of making the way on around, it is the case we are hearing Fabian Hunheger here has had a bit of a moment for slow-mo racing of circuit at the old hairpin, has dropped down to P15. Now we're not going to get a replay of that. I think it's happened too far back in time. In fact, we're not going to get that replay, but it is the case the slow-mo racing machine that was running P13 has lost out massively, and could we see some potential last-minute upsets for some drivers here, given the fact we've still got time to go? And as they make the way on around, it is the case, well, with 42.5 minutes of racing remaining by the time the slow-mo racing machine gets up towards the Melbourne hairpin, plus the final lap, anything can happen. Now, an update on our ambient conditions and our weather conditions. It is the case that we've had pretty much brilliant sunshine with the occasional speckle of cloud every so often today. Well, with that in mind, of course, we started off an ambient of 21 degrees centigrade, a track temperature of 29 degrees. Ambient's now 19 degrees centigrade, and it is the case that track temperatures come down to 24 degrees. So that track temperature and ambient temperature is gradually evolving. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for our drivers. And also the wind has picked up a little bit. We didn't really have any wind to begin with, but now we do have quite a bit of wind blowing. 4 km/h winds blowing in the direction of what is effectively down the start-finish straight. So it will mean that some braking zones are extended and some will be now cut a little bit shorter. But as we see Harry Phillips here, our race leader, making his way through the braking zone of turn 1 without any issues. It is the case, running comfortably there in the lead of this race by a margin of 18 seconds almost now. Phillips definitely trying to put this one to bed as the time wears on, but meanwhile trying to put it to bed, well, we can see here it is the case that Marcus Fox has just found his way past what is there Jordan Cotton and also Rove as they roll their way through the Coppice corner. In fact, we take a look back at what happened. Was they're making their way down their hill. Well, it looks as they went into the old hairpin here. What did Cotton... Well, it is the case. We saw Rove there going a little bit wide. And in the end, Marcus Fox dared to go round the outside. Plus there, what was Alex Smith in the BMW M2 acting as a little bit of a rolling roadblock on the inside of turns 5 and 6. Well, that was brave stuff from Marcus Fox. And now, I think it's the case the Quantum Racing team driver, Alex Rove, has Jordan Cotton, who's looking to be the better Aston Martin driver of the two of them, as we return to live pictures. And as we do, here is that battle. But you can see as well, that is Leighton Austin trying to get in on the mix here, and well, you wouldn't be surprised they both go deep in synchronicity. And well, I think it's the case Leighton Austin was hoping he could perhaps help his teammate by putting himself between the pair, but in the end it's the case they both go off circuit, and Rove versus Cotton is not ending anytime soon as we ride on board here the Quantum Racing team machine as they make their way out of turn number 1. And as they head down the hill towards the old hairpin once again by the Craner curves, more drama in the mix. We've got a drive-through penalty for Chris Black. It is the case our P10 driver has been a recipient of an automated penalty for track limits, but focusing more on the here and now. Rove getting a poor run for the old hairpin. He's looking very vulnerable as he heads through Starkeys and up towards Coppit's corner soon, but before that they've got to get to McLean's. And as they head into turn number 7, you can see how Jordan Cotton is literally salivating every corner here. He wants that P13. It may be unlucky for some, but he doesn't care. He wants the position, and that run through the old hairpin tells you all the speed that he's carrying through there compared to Roth, who just does not seem to have the momentum on his side. But as they now make their way down the back straight, it is the case. Now everything starts to balance out here, and I think Roth is more up to speed with the latter half of the lap. Well, that seems to be where he's got the pace by comparison, but Cotton is not disappearing anytime soon as they make their way into the braking zone here for Melbourne. It is the case, Roth will need to position this car well, as there's almost contact there. As they make them out the corner, to be fair, Cotton showing how close he can get, but now getting a bit too close there. He has to back it off briefly and take a small breather before he goes racing once again. But Roth definitely right now under a huge pressure as they roll the way out the final corner and head up towards another lap. On to what is lap number 70 they go, 69 laps complete. And as they charge down towards turn number 1, well behind them they do have the slow-mo racing machine closing gradually, but in front they have the 99 BMW M2 there as being driven by Andrew Pike, and right now that has brought the pair of them back together as they make their way down the hill. And as they come charging on down in towards the old hairpin this time around, will it be the same story as the last lap? Will we see Cotton get the better run and Roth have to go defensive through Starkeys? I think it will be that story as they charge up the hill, but this time I think it's the case that Cotton's going to try and go inside to outside into McLean's corner. Can he get Roth to go deep? No, Roth parks on apex there, brings it back onto the racing line, but there's so much pressure being bounced onto him here. It is the case that as they roll their way through Coppit, I would not be surprised if it's a tiny little error that settles the differences here, because Cotton right now, just look at how close he is running to the back of Roth as they make their way up towards the S's. 38 minutes still on the clock. They're driving as if they're on fresh tyres, and this is a qualifying stint because they are flying, these two. But right now, Cotton is doing everything in his power to stay literally in arm's reach that rear wing. He wants that move. It's coming, and Roth has got to defend for it as if his life depends on it. For as they break their way into Melbourne, behind them, we can see that Hundhege is closing up in the P15 Audi as they roll their way out of Melbourne and up towards Gollard's here. One of the closest battles of the circuit, and we're going to stay with it for the time being. But as we say, here is our P15 driver closing up, and then in between them all, here's the case, they're going to have the leaders coming on through, and I do believe that is Harry Phillips, who's now going to try and split the pair in front, and that is going to be to the frustration of Cotton, who just wants to be able to get the move done, but he is being prevented each and every time, and it's not necessarily his own pace, it just seems to be frustration from other cars making their way through the order, and he has to give way. But as they come charging down the hill this time, all four drivers in long succession heading into that braking zone here. It is the case, you can see Roth goes a bit deep, and this is the opportunity that they've all been waiting for. But the thing for Harry Phillips at this point, how does he navigate this as well? Well, forget that, because Cotton's literally left, right, left, looking for that potential space. He can't find it, but as they roll their way through, Phillips there, a little bit of a tap. He now makes his way to the inside, and both drivers back it off there for the race leader. But look at this, Hundhege is trying to close up on the inside. He's gone to the inside here, and that's for P14. And as they make their way out of the corner, you can feel the frustration for Jordan Cotton. He literally will be right now thinking, that's my place. And as they make their way down to the S's at this point, now the off-pace motorsports driver can't let that unsettle him and knock him off pace, as he almost does feel a bit unsettled there through the S's, and he's coming back already. He does not want to let that P14 go, but I think he's going to have to at this point, because he's not going to outbrake the Audi. There's contact between the two of them, and the two turn. As we see, everyone has to take evasive action, and as they do, it's the case that both drivers here have to settle their differences, and I think it's the case that the slow-mo racing machine has to turn itself around gradually. That's very unfortunate, but to be fair, I don't think Jordan Cotton wanted to make the contact there. It's just a small tap, and it's set off a chain reaction of taps there, but that's how close the racing is. And when the stakes are that high, whether it's for the win or whether it's a P14, it matters to the drivers, and contact will happen. But to be fair, I think it's the case that they'll bring themselves back up to speed and settle their differences in terms of a friendly chat outside on the paddock. It won't be any animosity between the two teams, because it was close racing all the way through. But it is the case that the slow-mo racing driver here, Hundhege, will definitely feel inconvenienced by that, and now he's got to get himself back up to speed and go hunting after that P15. But meanwhile, looking further out the road, having gained so many places so far, Scott Ticehurst right now chasing after Richard Pixley as they make their way down into the old hairpin, and Pixley at this point under major pressure here as the Audi R8 driver looking to go on the offensive. We ride on board here with Ticehurst, then it's Pixley in front on the right as they get so close into turn 6 as they roll the way into McLean's corner. Ticehurst there having to open the steering wheel up, otherwise he's going to tap the back of Pixley, I think you would argue. Couldn't get the car stopped, and as they roll the way into Coppice Corner right now, where it is the case, it is all opening up here, and we've got just over half an hour to go at Donington today. And as they make the way down the back straight this time, I think Ticehurst will realise, okay, Pixley is not strong in the run to McLean's corner. That's where he's got to be careful, because if he gets too close, he will end up being right there on the rear end of Pixley, and he'll have nowhere to go other than to point the car in a straight line and try and run it deep out of McLean's, which is not what you want when you want to make a move. You want to be so close, you want to be within touching distance. And as they exit Melbourne this time, and it is the case there on Izuka 700 in the Twitch chat saying it's so easy to punt the car in front at the hairpin. We've seen that a couple of times today. Oh goodness me, and that is a turn. Surely not. That is for our race leader in the N2 class. That is Alex Nunes in contact with Ticehurst there, and as Nunes gets himself back up to speed, we also see is that my goodness, that's Daniel Austin's, who's turned it on their hairpin as well and into the pits. What has happened to Austin's? Well, this is only moments to go and making its way through the penultimate corner here. Does Austin's get this completely wrong, or is it the case that we've missed something else in this instant? Well, we're seeing it from Austin's perspective here. Our cameraman's focusing on it, and as Austin's made his way into the final corner, oh goodness me, and Austin's has just come completely into the corner, not expecting Alex Nunes to be parked now after being turned. And well, that is so unfortunate for Daniel Austin's. That could be another major upset in his race in terms of taking him off the podium. In fact, in the pits, he's got to do repair work to the car. And well, with that in mind, he's dropping down the order like a stone, down to P6 already. And I think it's the case he wouldn't have come in if he could have driven the car. I think it may be the case that our safety marshals have been waving what is the black and orange flag, or the meatball flag as they like to refer to it. They nickname it down the paddock, and Austin's is in the pit lane with repair work right now, and he is losing places by place, as it is the case down to P7 already. It is not the way he's waiting to go, and they're still working on the car as it currently stands. Meanwhile, I can tell you it is the case that for Alex Nunes right now, he's staying out there, and his advantage to what is Andrew Pike, the Sim Racing collective team, is now only 2 seconds, and Nunes now has to dig so deep for 33 minutes after running this race flawlessly. It has been upset, not by his error, but it is the case that it has been upset all the same, he will feel, and he's now got an Andrew Pike right there in the wings, waiting to take that lead off him. And the Sim Racing collective at this point will be egging on their driver, literally lap after lap, saying he's weak, he's vulnerable, he's got damage to the car, you've got to go for it. And can Nunes hold on? It's a long way to the checkered flag. We've got 30 plus minutes to go, and Nunes right now has got to find every little reserve in order to hold on, because he won't want to pit. If he pits, it's over. Even if it's just going to do repair work, it's going to cost him at least 30 seconds in the pit lane. It's going to be too much time lost. We'll have to wait to see how the lap times evolve for Pike versus Nunes, but right now it does seem as though Pike has got that lap time on his side, which is understandable, of course. Meanwhile, behind Pike, as they make the way out the old hairpin, and now ahead of him we can see that is Sakari Lehtinen here, now up to P4 of everything that's happened, and the thing continuing to chase after a potential podium. But the thing is for him, of course, that podium is quite a way up the road. It's in the hands of Chris Hack in that P3, and Lehtinen by comparison, we're still waiting for an update on our timer, but as he makes his way through the right hander of Coppice Corner, we'll get that update very shortly as he makes his way to the timing line, the sector line in the run to the S's, and as he heads across it now, he is 28 seconds off of Chris Hack. So I think it is going to be the case. It will be a Wild Things Racing podium unless anything drastic happens. And to be fair, I said that only a few minutes ago, and look what's happened between then and now. I should probably stop saying it because the commentator's curse seems to be striking quite a few drivers, but still, it is the case that it's not over yet, and well, we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out to the finish. But meanwhile, we do see here Amit Sedaka battling with what is Chris McKenna. McKenna on the right, Kogulu on the left of the picture as they make the way into turn 1, and Kogulu battling for P19. There's a bit of contact between the two drivers there, and well, the McLaren driver just getting a little bit of a tap on the front bumper to the rear bumper of the BMW Sim Racing driver. And as they make the way down the hill, I think Kogulu will be thinking as though, given how bad it's gone with that major whack to the wall coming out of the S, S's, he needs to try and fight his way up to P15, which to be fair is realistically achievable given the fact that between Kargula and Black the gap is only currently around 15 seconds, and the pace that Kargula has demonstrated in clear air would be enough to potentially get him up into that battle with Chris Black. But we will wait and see, because of course each and every driver will be looking to defend and hold on to each position. But meanwhile, speaking of holding position, here's your BMW M2 leader of Nunes with the wounded car, and as they make the way up the hill towards McLean's corner, behind him that is Andrew Pike, who we ride on board with as they make the way into turn number 7. And as they make the way up towards what is Coppice Corner here, in terms of the way the lap times are going, I can confirm that over the last 2 laps, Nunes has been losing 7 to 8 tenths a lap by comparison with Andrew Pike. So that damage is taking its toll on Nunes' car here as they make the way down towards the S's, and as they roll the way under braking here, I think it's the case. It may be a bit more of a question of when, not if, the battle is going to kick off, because these are the gaps we've typically seen between the two drivers over so long, albeit in cars where one's not wounded and the other, also where both cars are not wounded, but we do have a wounded car in front leading this race. And as they make the way out of the penultimate corner here, you see Pike definitely started to tee up, just getting a little bit closer corner by corner as they roll the way into Goddard's. Heading in to the left-hander here, Pike going a little bit deeper to get the run out and get on the throttle comfortably in the charge up towards turn number 1. We, to be fair, do have quite a bit of distance here, and it is the case that Pike right now know that whilst he can push it, he doesn't want to push it too hard, because he doesn't want to make a mistake of his own doing, which will compromise this opportunity. And with the fact they have just under 30 minutes on the clock, it is the case that Pike can really gradually build this one up and tee it up as they make the way down the hill here through the crane of curves. Well, it is the case that right now Pike keeping it smart and sensible as they roll the way into the old hairpin. But as we look from them to Chris Black here versus Jordan Cotton. Now, Black moments ago, with that Black, of course, having that drive-through penalty, and he's just made his way past Jordan Cotton. And as they roll the way out the corner, can we take a look back? We can indeed, and this was how the move was done for P14 as they charge up towards what was Melbourne. Now keep your eyes on Black in what is the off blue-green Porsche up the inside there, and as they rolled the way through the right-hander, Jordan Cotton given the space, and that is also to race leader Harry Phillips, as I understand, who's coming through flashing his lights there, and as they made the way up into Goddard's, well, Black did not give in there, went a bit deep into the corner, however, and opened things up, and Phillips coming on through in the end. But the differences between the two drivers being settled, and as they make the way up the hill now, it is the case that Black definitely, in fact, that is not, my apologies, that's not Harry Phillips in front. I actually believe that might be, unless I'm mistaken, Richard Pixley just in front, who's running P8 a lap ahead of these guys. But returning to the live pictures and also the close-in cameras, it is the case that Black finds his way past Cotton there, and now Cotton under a bit of pressure to try and come back at him as they make the way down towards the S's. As they come charging down into the braking zone at this point in time, it is the case I think Cotton's got more to worry about from behind in terms of drivers that can pursue, and the fact we've got Hunhege, who is 8 seconds off, but we'll have to wait to see whether Black's able to break away off into the distance, as we do see Scott Ticehurst there coming through on the inside, and he is 2 seconds off of Pixley. Now, it is a bit confusing here, but just to clarify in terms of how they all sit in the order, I can tell you that Scott Ticehurst is chasing after Richard Pixley. Pixley is not the driver immediately in front of Ticehurst. Pixley is, of course, going to be in a Porsche 991, but it is the case that is why the other Wild Things racing drivers in front. That's Chris Hack, in fact, and instead it is the case that Pixley is the Porsche that's at the head of this group right now. So Ticehurst will be feeling as though he's chased after Pixley, but I think he'll then realise, no, he's actually chased after Chris Hack, who is a lap ahead. But as they make the way down through the crane of curves this time around, Ticehurst, to be fair, delivering lap after lap and lapping pretty much on the leader pace right now. It is the case if he continues on this, there's no reason why he can't close up to Pixley right at the end. And fantastic pace from Scott indeed. I'd have to agree with you there on his own, on Zuka_700 in the Twitch chat. Definitely showing a huge amount of pace as he rolls his way through turn number 7 there. But as he comes on through at this point, waiting for the next opportunity. Further back, we can see that Chris McKenna here not letting that P19 go. Kargulu took it off him, to be fair, in the run to turn 1 about 4 laps ago, but the distinct GG driver staying with Kargulu as they make the way up the hill through Starkeys and in towards McLean at this point. And I think it may be the case that traffic's fallen a bit unfavourably between them, but meanwhile, it is the case. We didn't see it on camera, but Andrew Pike has found his way past what is Alex Nunes into lead of the class. And in fact, we tried to take a look back at what exactly has happened between them. before we do, they make the way out towards the line. In fact, we can see out there Nunes falling back. We take a look back here, and well, the move was already made before we can get to our replay footage, so it has happened much earlier on than we anticipated. But it is the case, the Sim Racing Collective machine and now ahead of Nunes, and well, the Rapid Drivers Club driver here running in P2. He'll be able to run P2 until the very end as we look back at the footage, but at the same time you can understand that for Nunes in the 13 car, it is going to feel as though he has been robbed of an opportunity here to really put their foot down for the win and take the fight back to the Sim Racing Collective. But to be fair, we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out at the end, as we do see Nunes closing up on this replay into Melbourne. But as they roll away out of the corner, it is the case now we return to the live pictures, and well, we look to Alex Nunes in particular, and Nunes off again. We look away for a brief moment, and in fact he's had an off track at what appears to be, well, that looks to be at McLean's corner, and well, the Rapid Drivers Club drivers say it's not so, that it's all falling apart as the time wears down, and that car is crabbing on the suspension. And will crabbing being a term to say that the car can't be driven in a straight line due to damage? Instead, the wheels are slightly angled outwards, a bit too much than the normal camber they have on the car, and therefore it's the case he's having to drive with the steering wheel not pointed straight to keep it in a straight line. But Alex Nunes has been in the wars, and this is not the way he'll want it to be going right now. It's all going from great to bad to disastrous, and if that is a pit stop on the cards as well, well, this could only get worse for the Rapid Drivers Club driver, who really has been the driver on the lead pace here. But meanwhile, we look from him to Amit Serdar Kargulu, I should say, as I almost missed my words. In fact, it is the case that we are hearing that Kargulu has retired from this race. We're not sure what exactly has happened, but Alex Nunes into the pit lane here, and they're going to have to do repair work on the car, and that will mean that Joshua Vanstone right now, well, he is quite a way down on Nunes. To give you an idea of the gap, when he comes to the end of the run down the back straight here, we'll get an update, but the podium sim racing driver here, I think, could be on course for a P2, given how this is playing out. As he makes his way down this back straight, the gap between himself and Nunes will stand. Well, we're not going to get an update on that, unfortunately. It does seem as though our timing tower is not going to play ball. But I would say right now, given the gap between us about 40 seconds, and Nunes is going to have quite a bit of repair work, it's definitely the case. That pit stop's going to be at least 30 seconds, if not more. I think Vanstone's into a chance for that P2. But what about further behind? We do have the toughest here, making his way up towards the final corner. And as he does, well, he's almost a lap down on Vanstone, to be fair, as he goes very deep into the final corner. In 23 minutes on the board, but to be fair, I think he went very deep there to let one of our lead GT3s go on through, and that is the number 26 car of what is there, Harry Phillips, on through as they make their way on out. But we focus a little bit on Nunes versus Vanstone. Here's Nunes coming up towards turn number 1, and there is Vanstone. We have a battle on for P2 in the BMW M2 class potentially here, if Vanstone can get close enough. Now, Nunes, of course, will have done the repair work to the car, and you can imagine he will now try and unleash that pace, which he had much earlier on, but that gap has come all the way down for Vanstone, and it'll give him a little bit more of a motivation as he makes his way up towards the old hairpin, that in the closing stages of this race, he may not just be settling for P3, he could be fighting for P2 in the class. But as he rolls his way out to the old hairpin, it is the case that we do look from him up to P14, driver Chris Black, P14 overall. And right now, Black, as he makes his way down the hill towards the old hairpin here, chasing after what is Rover for P13. And well, between the two of them, we have got the number 7 car there of what is Richard Pixley, who is a lap up on these guys as they make the way up the hill through Starkey's and up towards McLean's. And you can imagine that Alex Rover at this point will be hoping that he can let Pixley through in a place where it's not going to compromise his race in line, but I don't think he's going to get his wish granted. Whereas they make the way up the hill here, we ride on board with Chris Black, who's going to be sneaking up the inside. And as they make the way up through, their blue flags being waved for the pair of them, because they do have more cars coming on through. And in fact, that is, I believe, Daryl Young making his way on through as they head on down now. That was very opportunistic of Chris Black to dive to the inside and get the move done. But as we look from the exterior and look back from Chris Black's car, there's Daryl Young tucked in behind him. And then it will be the case that just behind we do have Alex Rowe, who'll be trying to come back at him in the run later on the lap if he can. But that was a very smart position from the Blacksmith Racing driver, very on edge racing. And sometimes that's what it takes to gain those places very late on in the proceedings as they make their way on through. But as they roll the way on through the long left hand, in fact, that's Patrick Sedaka. I should clarify that is not Daryl Young. My apologies. The Audi trying to find its way on through these drivers, a lap ahead of them, of course. It is the case of Chris Black now chasing after what is Denise Pope, who, to be fair, it should be said right now, we talked about Denise Pope earlier in what was P18 at the time and running comfortably in that P18, not really putting a foot wrong. But Wild Things Racing driver right now running in P12, and this goes to show you, and as soon as I say not putting a foot wrong, the commentator's curse strikes Denise Pope, and well, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, I feel very guilty about that one, but it's the case. The Wild Things Racing driver was going to say, running comfortably in P12 and now having to yield P12 to Chris Black there on returning to circuit, but still a great opportunity to try and bring home a top 15 finish here. The next driver is Alex Roth behind, but Roth is a bit further back, so I think Pope can settle down and get back into a rhythm before feeling that pressure. And as Pope rolls away through turn number 8 at this point, number 79 driver definitely right now, we've been cursing herself for making that small mistake. Heading into the S's here, it is becoming quite the hectic moment through the chicane this time, as we do have a lot of drivers trying to find the way through. We've got BMW and 2s or a couple of laps down. We've then got GT3s who are laps ahead of other GT3s here. Everybody trying to settle themselves out, and as they roll their way into turn number 11, it is the case. I think they've all just about cleared one another, but we can see here Vanstone right now. He is ahead of both what is there, Chris Carr, and also the driver ahead of him, which is Natafas. He's a lap ahead of the pair of them, if not more. And right now, Vanstone trying to cut up the inside, but we've got M2s lapping M2s. We've got GT3s lapping M2s and GT3s. It is a bit of bedlam coming through the final few corners here, but I think we've almost navigated it all now, and they all settle back down into a rhythm as they roll their way on through into another lap into turn number 1. But as they come through the corners here, we do look to Chris McKenna, who right now is chasing after Jan Barth as they make their way out of the final corner and on to another lap. As they charge across the timeline, this time with 19 minutes still on the clock. It is the case of the Distinct GG driver at this point trying to bring home another place in the finish. And as we said earlier, and well, I'm going to say this now and forever hold my peace if it is the case, it curses Chris McKenna, much like Denise Pope only moments ago. Hasn't put a foot wrong in this race, to be fair, and is chasing after that P18 position. A very reliable drive from McKenna as he heads into the old hairpin, and we can see that Jan Barth going very deep, and this could be an opportunity for McKenna to go on the offensive as they charge up the hill up towards what is there going to be McLean's corner once more. But 18.5 minutes on the clock, and McKenna definitely feeling very comfortable behind the wheel of the 92 McLaren. As they head out the corner, you can see Barth looking vulnerable as they make the way up into the apex of Coppice. And as we ride on board here with Chris McKenna on the dashboard, gets a nice exit out of the corner. Barth, by comparison, not able to get away, just having to hold position now as they head up into the braking zone here for the S's. McKenna, of course, had to brake and lift off a little bit earlier in order to maintain distance, but he goes a bit deep there in the dirty air off the back of the Porsche, and the car getting unsettled. And of course, we saw earlier, it was the case of one of our other McLaren drivers, how the car was just unsettled in that dirty air off of the GT3 in front of it when trying to go for a move. And that's exactly what's happened to McKenna there. The car just does not want to turn into apex as much as he would like, and it's costing that run. But he is seeing that he's got the pace. He's definitely showing the signs that he can go for that P18. He's just got to be able to try and get the move on, coming out to say the old hairpin, and get Jan Barth to make a mistake. As they head up towards the timeline here, you can see Barth trying to make his way past what is Luna there into turn number 1. Both drivers go, but McKenna, to be fair, being a bit smart with the braking there, making sure to give the BMW M2 plenty of time to react and keep the door open for McKenna, so he wasn't able to close up as much as he would like to there. I think it was the case that safety was the better part of the approach, and as they make their way into the old hairpin this time, plenty of traffic ahead for Jan Barth, and McKenna, if he can get this exit nailed, this is going to be the opportunity. He's going to go all in here, and that is brave from McKenna. Now, can he get it done up the hill? It's going to be too wide for the GT3s, behind a too wide, but he does, oh goodness me, and in the end McKenna trying to go up the inside of Chris Carr, oh goodness, and it's the case that Juice Luna in the end being caught by McKenna as he tried to return to the racing line, and well, it's not working out for them. And we also had one of our GT3s making the run through, and that was, I think, Daryl Young having to take to the grass at last possible moment, but that is not the way they wanted it to work out. And well, with that in mind, we now look to Daryl Young here as he makes his way through what is the S's. It is the case, charging on through. Daryl Young now chasing after what is Lehtinen here, and in fact it is the case that Lehtinen up to P4 of everything that's happened, and Young trying to get the move on here for that P4 position as they roll the way out. And as they charge up towards what is turn number 12 at this point, the Team Honda Racing driver, the Lehtinen Racing driver, right now just holding on as much as he can. But Daryl Young definitely showing the pace. As we see they're parked on the exit of the final corner is the slow-mo racing machine, which is pointing the wrong way. They've just turned that around. But right now, Sakiri Lehtinen, our winner at Spa, looking to try and hold on to that P4 and hold the advantage in the championship as they go into round number 3. But they make their way past it. Wins the podium sim racing BMW M2. And as they roll the way down the hill, Lehtinen definitely feeling that pressure as they head in towards the old hairpin. Rolling on through the right-hander at this point with 15 minutes still on the clock. It is going to be quite the fight between these two. Of course, no strangers to running close together on circuit, but right now Daryl Young has got to deliver everything he can in order to be able to look for the move here, because Lehtinen's not going to give up that P4 easily as they roll their way through the right-hander of McLean's and up towards Coppice, but plenty of traffic ahead of them. We do see a BMW M2. That is Alex Smith in front. We also do have there Jan Bath just ahead as well, and as they make the way on out here, well, Alex Smith moves out the way immediately in very sensible fashion there, to be fair, very aware of the GT3s coming on through. And as they head into the braking zone, this isn't the place you want to catch traffic. And as we ride on board with Daryl Young here, can he potentially pull off something magical in the run in towards the hairpins? Well, he's going to try and come through with Lehtinen into what is the penultimate corner. You see Jan Bath giving a wide line, but as they make the one through, of course, Daryl Young has to be very patient on the throttle, doesn't want to tap the rear of his rival in front. We've seen that time and time again already here today, those taps through the hairpin. And as they make the way into the final corner here, Young definitely looks to be the driver with the faster car under his hands, but it is the case Lehtinen is going to make that Honda NSX as wide as he possibly can as they make the way up into turn number 1. They go on to what is for them now lap number 88. We've still got plenty of laps to go, and well, can Young find his way on through, or will Lehtinen hold on? And you'd imagine the Honda NSX driver at this point will feel as though if he brings home that P4, it will feel like a victory today as they make the way down into the old hairpin. As they roll the way on through, Daryl Young at this point has got to be careful, of course, because the Audi does strip a lot of life out of its tyres when those tyres are up to temperature. The thing that will help him out, of course, is the fact that track temperature is down to 20 degrees centigrade now, and 18 degrees centigrade ambient temperature as well. So he's not going to be taking the life out of the tyres due to the overall ambient and track temperature. It'll be how hard he pushes the car from this point. Obviously, you can see how he's pushing the car there and to make corrective inputs on entry into Coppice corner. And as he makes his way in the charge down the back straight, Lehtinen definitely seems to be breaking away. Meanwhile, in the battle for what is P2 overall, we have Patrick Sedaka here from World Things Racing being closed up to by Chris Hack, and it looks as though right now we have a battle for P2 on the cards between the two World Things Racing drivers. And you can imagine that Sedaka at this point will not want to lose that P2, because for him that, I think, would, if my maths is correct, put him into the lead of the championship going into round number 3, or put him so close to Lehtinen that it'd effectively be on par. And as they make the way through turns 5 and 6, they have some traffic in front of them at this point, some GT3 traffic to clear, and that is the car that I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, of Casbergen in P11 as they make the way up the hill into the braking zone for Coppice, and so they can making a critical pass through the traffic there, and that will give him some breathing versus Hack as Hack now makes his way on through down the back straight. As they come charging on down here towards the S's, the battle's all starting to come together right at the end. And as they roll the way on around at this point, well, Hack now having to dig deep here to try and take the place off of the Audi driver as they roll the way in towards the penultimate corner. But there's not long to go. Has he got enough time? Has he got enough left in the car? The same question could be asked of what is one Jordan Cotton here, who right now is trying to take P14 of Alex Rowe from Quantum Racing Team. The off-pace motorsports driver up the inside here into the hairpin. He goes all in. It's side by side here. Rove goes deep. He'll get the run out the corner. Cotton will have track position, but he won't have the speed up towards the final corner. Can Rove come back at him here, or is it too late? I think Rove went a bit too deep there, but Cotton goes deep in return. And as they roll the way through the left-hander, it is the case that Jordan Cotton gets the move done up to P14. And, well, they're going to be very pleased about that down in the off-pace motorsports garage. I can tell you about that because they have been working for that P14 for the best part of the last 15 laps. But as they make the way out to the opening corner here, will Rove come back at him, or is it all said and done as they charge down the hill towards the old hairpin? They come roaring on down past the camera through the crane of curves, and as they do, it is the case that right now I think Rove is having to settle for that P15 and focus on just finding the pace and establishing the run back at his rival as they make the way up towards McLean's. But as they do, it is the case we look from them. happens to the drivers a bit further down the road, and in particular we do look to our BMW M2 class leaders here of the Sim Racing Collective, Andrew Pike behind the wheel, and as they make the way through Coppice at this point, the number 99 driver I think will be feeling as though it is a clear run to the end, with Alex Nunes having had to make that pit stop. He's still on to P2 in the BMW M2 class. It is Nunes for Rapid Drivers Club, and Van Stone in that P3, not able to close up enough in order to be able to put the pressure on for P2, but it does look as though the M2 class is mostly said and done at this point in terms of those potential overtakes. Of course, we'll keep our eyes out in case anything should happen at the last moment, but I think it has mostly calmed down there, and it's now the GT3s who need to settle their differences. Speaking of which, of course, we do have the battle for P2 between Patrick Sedaka and what is Chris Hack as they make their way through the camera shot and down the hill. We also do have the growing battle between Daryl Young and what is Sakiri Lehtinen as they make the way out of Melbourne hairpin here, and as they do, Lehtinen trying to hold on as we ride on board here with the Lehtinen Racing, that Team Honda Racing driver, as he makes his way into the final corner. The Finn right now having to dig so deep here to keep Daryl Young at bay, and the problem for Daryl Young is he's got so much pace in that Audi behind, but as soon as he gets this close, it's just the pace is taken out of the car because of the dirty air. I think Young needs to find a way to unsettle Lehtinen, but the thing is, with Lehtinen, he just doesn't make mistakes, and we've seen that all evening. We saw it at Spa, he's just infallible, and right now as they make the way down to the old hairpin, Young's got to find a way to upset Lettinen's balance. As we see there, that's the Sim Racing Collective BMW M2 off circuit, and that is Anthony Schattler, so the number 199 car, so not the lead car of the two in the M2 class, but the second of the two cars, but still they'll bring it back onto circuit very shortly. In fact, I've heard they're back on circuit already at Starkey's Bridge, but as they make the way up towards what is a Coppice here, I'll try to ride on board, but you can see Lehtinen, just there's no error in these lines. It's absolutely precision smooth. Meanwhile, with Young, it's definitely precise, but it is the case he's really having to work the car to get closer and closer, because he needs to be this close to effect a pass into other heavy braking zones. But as they roll the way through, you see Young just a little bit unsettled by the curves there at the SS by comparison, and as they head down towards the braking zone for Melbourne, once again Young having to wait his turn, just not able to find that space to go for the move. As they charge up the hill towards what is the final quarter of Goddard's here. Not many more laps left on the schedule for these guys. In the fact, less than 10 minutes now as they roll the way through the left hand of Goddard's corner and head on to another lap. About 5 to 6 more laps in this race, if our maths is correct. And Lehtinen at this point, I think if he can keep this gap at half a second, I think he'll feel safe so long as he doesn't make an error. But rolling on through the right-hander here, he'll just have to focus on taking it one lap at a time and negotiating the M2 and the GT3 traffic as it arises. And they're making the way down the hill. This is going to add a bit of complexity here, and surely not. I think it's going to be the case that Young's gone round the outside, and my goodness, it is the case that Daryl Young there off camera will get a replay of that. But the Wild Things Racing driver has found its way on through, and well, let's take a look at exactly how it happened. As they made the way into the corner here, we looked to some of our other exterior cameras, and in fact we looked to the helicam. In fact, the helicopter was just running along behind them as they went. So this is Daryl Young behind. Now watch Lehtinen here, gets himself positioned, but positions himself poorly behind the M2, who puts it on the inside, and Daryl Young simply says, well, there's all that space on the outside, I'll just take that, and he just comes through as quickly as that. And well, that's the first mistake we have seen from Lehtinen over the course of this season so far. And to be fair, was it really a mistake? It was just the wrong place to put the car at the wrong time behind some M2 traffic, but it has cost the Finn. And now can he come back at Daryl Young with only 7 minutes to go? I think it may be the case that now that Young is in clear air, he's going to run away with this. But to be fair, the Team Honda Racing, Team Lehtinen driver is by no means a quitter, and now he will try to put that pressure on as they cross the timeline onto lap 93. They charge on through into turn 1 once again. Very bad luck there, as you say, on Izuka, and for Lehtinen right now, he's just got to dig in and look to see what he can get back out of this. Meanwhile, in the battle for P2, I can tell you it is the case that Sedaka has opened the gap up to Chris Hack now. He's opened it up to 2.1 seconds. I think it is the case. He's been a bit more secure. Perhaps there's a bit of a wobble. Now Chris Hack has fallen back to a degree. Meanwhile, further down the order, it is the case of looking to P13 driver here, Denise Pope. Well, Pope has been cleared to a degree by Chris Black, albeit the gap staying around 1.2 to 1.4 seconds. So the Wild Things Racing McLaren driver here not falling out of contention for this P12. So it'll be interesting to see whether Pope can put a move on right at the end as they roll their way through what is the Melbourne hairpin. But coming on out at this point, it is looking a bit stagnant right now in terms of the opportunity of battle. But we look to Chris Black, who by comparison is caught right up behind Kasbergen coming out to the final corner. And Peter Kasbergen at this point, either is the case, the Dutch Endurance Team Blue driver under a lot of pressure, and it's the worst time to be under pressure right at the end of the race as they roll the way through the right hand of their return number one. Now heading down through the crane occurs. We ride on board and look back from the P11 driver, looking at Chris Black, who's trying to make the move in the Porsche 991 as they head down the hill into the braking zone here for the old hairpin. You see Kasbergen going defensive, but Black relied on that. He went for the cutback move, and as they make the way up the hill, Kasbergen is going to lose out there with Chris Black going around the outside, and that was very smart position from Chris Black. He knew his rival was going to go defensive, so what he decided to do was simply go, you know what, okay, I'll just brake literally 10 metres earlier, take a bit of speed out the car and sweep through on the inside onto the outside of corner exit, and that's exactly how you get it done at the old hairpin here. The Blacksmith Racing driver giving you a textbook example of how to make a pass at the hairpin, but as they make the way down towards S's right now, it is the case that Kasbergen will have to worry about the fact if he can't get that momentum back soon, he's going to have Denise Pope looking for that P12 off of him as they make the way up towards Melbourne this time around. Clock ticking down, 5 minutes. Can Kasbergen hold on to P12, or is that going to fall by the wayside to the McLaren behind as they roll the way through the right-hander? Of course, they're both vying to be the number one McLaren in this race now. It is the fact. It's a small accolade, but it can be a very important one in giving you a little boost of confidence going into the next round, and both drivers will want it. But as they make the way on through at this point, it is the case that Kasbergen keeping it together, and I think finding his rhythm now after that moment. But of course, the proof will be in how the time ticks down behind Jordan Cotton there in P14, trying to chase after this battle for P12, a way off of it to be fair. But at the same time, I think Cotton at this point, they'll take that P14 with open arms, given what they've had to go through here today in terms of the battles of Pace Motorsports. And it has been a strong drive from them, there's no doubt about that. Not the ideal drive they've wanted, but a solid one, and that's what counts sometimes as they make their way down into the old hairpin. But we look from them back up to what is Denise Pope here, who is closing on Kasbergen as they roll their way through the McLean's corner here. We've got a yellow flag somewhere on circuit, and I believe that yellow flag is for Juice Luna, as we've also got a yellow flag for Josh Lodge. I'm not sure what's happened between these two. Well, this was only moments ago. Now Lodge gets it wrong and loses the rear of the car coming out of the hairpin, and oh goodness me, where it's the case that I think just Luna was wondering if that McLaren was going to go any further. In the end, drove straight into it by accident, and the off-pace racing BMW M2 having a major moment there. I think he'll be kicking himself for that one, and I think Josh Lodge at that point will be thinking, well, the Durham University drivers there will be absolutely frustrated with that moment, but it happens. But Luna has definitely now got a car that needs to go to the pits with the damage it's picked up. But meanwhile, looking from them back up to Denise Pope. Pope right on the rear here of what is Kasbergen with 3 minutes to go, and Kasbergen getting caught up behind the M2. It's a drag race up towards turn number one, and you see Kasbergen trying to squeeze Pope to the inside, but as they make their way into the corner, Pope on that inside line, and as they roll their way through the opening corner, it's now the charge down the hill, but Pope's got the initial momentum. Can Pope take it all the way down in towards the old hairpin and seal the deal, or will Kasbergen come back here as the two McLaren drivers charge down towards the old hairpin? They roll the way on through, and as they come on through here, it looks like Pope's got it done. It's a smooth move for P12, and now trying to charge away as they make the way up towards McLean's, but it does look as though the move is said and done. Denise Pope gains P12, and it is the case Peter Kasbergen drops to P13 in the closing stages here. But as they make the way on around, we have to look back up to Daryl Young versus Zachary Lehtinen here. It is the case that with 2 minutes remaining, Lehtinen is closing back up. I think Daryl Young will be thinking, what do I have to do to shake that pesky Honda? Where it's the case, the only thing you can do is keep on driving as best as you can, Daryl, because right now Lehtinen is not giving this one up. And to be fair, say what you will about the Honda perhaps being a bit off pace, like I said earlier, it is the case Lehtinen is definitely showing the race pace of that Honda is much stronger than what it showed in qualifying. And as they make their way down towards the S's this time around, 1.5 minutes on the clock by the time they get to Melbourne, and Daryl Young there takes a bit too much of the apex of turn 10. Is that a track limits invalidation? We've lost a lot of momentum. And I think Lehtinen going to try and go around the outside into Melbourne hairpin. He looks at the cutback and, oh, goodness me. Lehtinen gets the cutback there under braking. And, well, now that was an absolutely wonderful move there from the Honda driver to get that P4 back. And I think Daryl Young himself, I think maybe a bit speechless in that cockpit right now as they make the way out of the final corner and onto what for them is going to be not quite the final lap as we're to understand it. Here's the case, they've got 2 more laps to go. Meanwhile, we see Harry Phillips here making his way towards the end of lap number 97. He will go on to a 98th and final lap as he takes the white flag with him, and next time around it will be the checkered flag. But as he comes right on through here, we do look to Daryl Young, who is not giving up on this battle by any means right now. He's going to try and come on back and try and pull something just as blinding as Lehtinen pulled him only a moment ago. Remember, these guys will have 1 more lap after this. They will finish because they've yet to be lapped by the leader. They will finish on the lead lap as Lehtinen gets it wrong, and Young looks the inside here, and it only took 1 mistake to kick it all off once again. Young on the inside as they roll their way out of Coppice corner. It's side by side on corner exit, but Young gets ahead and seals the door on the inside in the run to the S's. Lehtinen tucks in close behind here in the battle for P4. He looks the inside in the run down towards what is the S's. No way through as they come through, but Young gets it wrong onto the gravel, backs the car off, and Lehtinen is back through as they make their way up towards Melbourne. I think this time around Lehtinen's going to feel a lot more comfortable as they roll their way through Melbourne. He won't have the pressure, but great stuff between the two of them. And to be fair, Daryl Young gave it everything he could, but they've still got 1 more lap to go. It's not over yet. But speaking of things coming to an end, well, here comes your race leaders, ladies and gentlemen. And what can we say about Harry Phillips other than he has been on unstoppable form here today? He took pole position in qualifying by a sizable margin, and as he makes his way through the final corner, it's going to be to take the checker flag. Here he comes. It's Harry Phillips in the United Kingdom for Wild Things Racing, who takes the win in the GT3 class at Donington Park. And in behind him, it will shortly be the case that we will have P2, Patrick Sedaka. But before he makes his way to that line, it is the case he's still got a few corners to go. And well, for Sedaka here, this P2 has been an absolutely solid drive as well. It's the case, didn't quite have the pace versus Harry Phillips, but at the same time had the pace through and through to deliver this second place. Qualified second, will finish second. A brilliant drive from the Audi driver, and I think that will mean he's right up there in the championship battle with Lehtinen. Behind him, Chris Hackz, P3 at the line, a Wild Things Racing podium lockout. But then we have to look to Andrew Pike here, ladies and gentlemen, who are BMW M2 class leader, battling with Alex Nunes from Rapid Drivers Club for such a long time. And in the end, what separated the two of them wasn't an overtake, it wasn't the pace, but it was an instant at this very corner where Alex Nunes had to go to the pits for damage. So for the Sim Racing Collective, it's not the way they would have wanted it to go, but they'll take the win all the same. Andrew Pike brings the Sim Racing Collective 99 car to the line alongside Kieran Sharp, who drove it in the first stint. Congratulations to the pair of them. Alex Nunes in the end came home P2, and Joshua Vanstone took P3 in what was the BMW M2 class. Great driving from Vanstone to complete the podium there for Podium Sim Racing. But meanwhile, we look a bit further up the road, and Lehtinen's already come across the line P4 in a superb drive to P4, and it will be Daryl Young who takes P5 in the GT3 class when all is said and done. The last drive to complete his race. Brilliant race through and through, ladies and gentlemen. But in the end, it has been the day of Harry Phillips as he makes his way into the pit lane in the GT3 class, and it has been the day of what is Andrew Pike in the M2 class as we look in the pit lane here. That top 10 in the end in the GT3 class, Harry Phillips ahead of Patrick Sedaka, Chris Hackz P3, Zachary Lehtinen P4, Daryl Young P5, Leighton Austin P6, Daniel Austin's P7, Scott Ticehurst P8, all the way from the pit lane to P8, Richard Pixley P9, and Marcus Fox in the end P10. And in the BMW M2 class, Andrew Pike and the Sim Racing Collective 99 ahead of Alex Nunes from Rapid Drivers Club, Joshua Vanstone to complete the podium, and then Evan Latafus, Anthony Shatner completing the top 5 for the Sim Racing Collective 199, Alex Smith P6, Yus Lunet P7, and Chris Carr completing the 8 BMWs crossing the line to take the finish. But with that, you know what it's time for, ladies and gentlemen, post-race interviews, and we will bring you those very soon. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back in about 3 to 4 minutes. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, we are ready then for our post-race interviews with our class winners. And as per the tradition, we always start off with our GT3 class, and we begin with our World Things Racing at Colex GG driver in the number 26 car. That is Harry Phillips. As he joins me in the interview room, Harry, it looked as though it was a completely unstoppable performance today. Pole position in the end by being the only driver to set a 25 in qualifying and then just running away with things up front over the entirety of the 2.4 hour distance. Nothing could have gone wrong today. It was perfect, surely.
I think I didn't improve on my first flying lap. Seems to be a tradition for me. Set one flying lap and then don't improve. But yeah, I think it could have gone very differently if I didn't get pole, because Patrick behind, he was definitely someone to worry about for the entirety of the first stint. He was on my rear within 0.5 seconds for well over an hour. It was pretty intense, actually, being up front. I made loads of mistakes, small ones, costing me chips of time. So if it was the other way around, I think he might have run off into the distance a little bit. But yeah, it went all to plan today.
Well, indeed. And just on that battle between yourself and, of course, your teammate and rival, Patrick Sedaka, or part of the Sedaka division, as we like to refer to it, is the case keeping that pressure on you all the way through the opening stint in particular. But we've had a recent balance of performance change between the different cars, and particularly the Audi and the Porsche have both been on the receiving end of that. Did you feel as though that balance
Yes.
of performance change played into the situation?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've raced against fast drivers and Audis before the patch, before the balance performance changes, and it was very, very difficult to get ahead or stay ahead of an Audi before. I think what ended up happening was the Porsche gained a little bit and the Audi lost a little bit. The Audi's still a little bit quicker in the straights, but it's kind of, at least for me, it felt a bit more balanced. I mean, it definitely seemed that we were both lapping at pretty much the same pace for well into the 60-minute mark. So it seems that it's done a good job, because myself and Patrick were both quite similar in pace in general. Myself, Patrick, and Chris make up the typical pro team, and Dom Healy as well. We're all pretty much similar pace, and yeah, the balance was really good. The car, it did take me a little while to get used to it, to be fair. I was running quite an edgy setup, it felt like, particularly towards the end of the stint. The first stint, the tires, yeah, with the mistakes I made and drifting and sliding and hitting curbs, I was running low pressures, and the tires were pretty much dead after 30 minutes, and it was a very big struggle to keep the car alive.
Oh, I see. Well, we definitely saw that close running between the two of you for so long. And of course, the Porsche being one of those very sensitive cars whereby when it's in the zone, it's absolutely flying. But when it falls out the zone, it becomes an absolute devil in the detail to, as you say, keep alive. But in terms of how
Yes.
your strategy played into that, did you run as per your sort of plan A strategy, or was there a bit of an evolution given how much Patrick was pushing you throughout the race?
It was, so I started off thinking maybe I'll do a two-stop. Um, and I was thinking that right up to qualifying. I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to do a one stop or I'm going to try to do a two stop. At the last minute, I said, okay, let's just do the traditional normal strategy, which is a one stop. Try and get halfway, pit, and then try and get to the rest of the last half of the race done. It usually is quite difficult with the Porsche, because the fuel tank is usually a little bit lower than well than would be quite nice to have, because it tends to be it's quite thirsty on fuel, lower fuel tank capacity. It tends to be that it's quite difficult to get halfway in a 2.4 hour race. But this time around, it was actually quite easy. In fact, at the end of the race, I had 3-4 laps of fuel remaining. Um, so it was I was doing fuel saving throughout the entirety of the race, but only by a less aggressive fuel map, rather than actually having to fuel save, lift and coast and such.
Indeed, with your fuel saving, it didn't show too much to us, I must admit, on the broadcast, the fact you were still flying up front. And with regards to the second stint in particular, we saw you came out of the pits with a margin which was initially 12 seconds, and that margin just grew and grew and grew as time went on. Was the focus in the end more about just staying alive and avoiding the traffic situations? Because we saw time and time again so many situations where GT3s were stacking on top of GT3s and M2s were getting into the mix.
Yeah, that's the trickiest thing about the 2.4 is not only do you have to be consistent over nearly 2.5 hours of driving, which in its own right is really difficult, especially with the competition as well. You've got the slower cars to worry about, the M2s, and honestly, a lot of the time, just because of the pace difference between the cars alone, it's like navigating moving chicanes. It's very, very difficult, very challenging, and very mentally straining, because you can't get into a groove so much. Um, so it's hard to switch off a little bit, even down the straights, because particularly here the straights aren't very long, so you've got to constantly think, okay, I'm at the start of a straight. There's an M2 down the end of it. I'm probably going to catch him by the chicane, and so then I'm going to have a struggle through the chicane. I'm going to have to slow down to half speed that I usually would to go through there. It's quite a challenge, and I'm sure the M2s have a similar story, but swapped around. But yeah, in terms of the pit and what happened with the gap with Patrick, I'm not really sure what happened because I think I gained like 6, 7 seconds out of the pit stop. So maybe Patrick missed a box or something, or maybe got moved. I think I had a pretty spot on pit stop. It was straight up, straight down, and out. Yeah, the gap did continue going. I think I saw Patrick got into an incident with a back marker at some point, and then it was a fight between Chris and himself until the end.
Oh, indeed. And whilst they were batting over P2, in the end of the case, you're charging off to take that checkered flag. And just a comment on the fact that Wild Things Racing today locking out the GT3 podium. It must be a proud day for the team.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that feels pretty good seeing us at the top there, locking out the podium in GT3. It's always awesome to see. We've all pretty much everyone in the team has really uh, done well to improve. Everyone's getting faster, and we're making waves, starting to make waves.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of making waves, we'll be making waves across the Atlantic Ocean, heading to the United States in 2 weeks' time for Watkins Glen International, a new circuit on the block in a set of course of competition. How are you feeling for the New York State circuit?
I'm super excited. I love that track. I've only driven it once, and I've driven it in the Maserati GT4, which was an experience. But it's such a fun track, and it's just really good fun to lap around, and I'm sure it's going to be super exciting as well with the M2s going through the chicane at the top of the first sector. That's going to be good fun, I'm sure.
Well, we look forward to seeing you take to that circuit in 2 weeks' time. But just before we do let you go, of course, Harry, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to live on air tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out Pixley, Richard Pixley. I mean, he did an incredible job in qualifying today. It's a shame about the start; he got murdered a bit through lap one. But yeah, he put in an insane lap, 5 tenths down from pole, which is actually it's crazy how fast that was. Yeah, he's doing really well as a driver. So yeah, big shout out to Richard.
Well, with that, Harry, thank you for joining us in the interview room. As always, congratulations on the win today, a well-deserved win at Donington, and we look forward to seeing you take to the circuit in 2 weeks' time to see if you can make it 2 out of 2.
Yes, Paul. Thank you.
So coming from our GT3 class winner of Harry Phillips now to our BMW M2 CS class winners of Team Sim Racing Collective. In this case, I have Andrew Pike and Kieran Sharp joining me in the interview room for the 99 car. Gents, a very close race all the way through up to the midpoint of the second stint between yourselves and what was the Rapid Drivers Club machine piloted by Alex Nunes. And then it took a turn which saw you bring home the win, albeit not the way you perhaps guys wanted it to be made in terms of making that pass.
Nah, definitely not. Really unfortunate, and sorry I had to end that way before Nunes. Not much else could be done. It was, very challenging with the traffic, and he lost out the most, unfortunately, with a big incident. But yeah, he kept the noses clean and got another win, which is a good result.
Oh, indeed. Just rolling it back, of course, let's focus on how close it was between yourselves and Alex Nunes all the way through up to that point. Qualifying firstly, I have to ask, you guys have normally been, well, so far based on round number one and what we saw towards the end of season one, we've seen you guys really put in some very solid qualifying laps. Did it feel as though the bar was incredibly high when you saw Nunes set his initial pole lap?
Yeah, the lap Nunes set was very good benchmark. I like the first couple of laps, really important. They're normally going to be your quickest before the tyres start sliding around, and harder to go quicker. And fortunately, I made mistakes on both of them, and I was really struggling on the brakes here, Donington, and Nunes just hooked it up. And then I think most of these first few laps were always going quicker, and there was a period when I was like only like half a tenth off him, but yeah, he went slightly quicker again at the end. It was like 10th and a half, I think.
Indeed, it was very close between you both, but in the end, Nunes taking that pole position by just over a tenth come the checker flag on the qualifying session. But of course, qualifying is just one part of the whole event, and then we have 2.4 hours of racing. I have to ask, were you guys qualifying in P2? Did that change your perspective going into race, particularly for yourself, Kieran? Because we saw at the start, you literally hugging the back of Nunes for lap after lap. I think it was the case for the first 35 minutes, there was no more than 5 tenths of a second between the two of you. It was beautiful to watch.
Yeah, to be honest, for the whole first stint before he pitted, there really weren't much in it. There was maybe a brief period where we split up for like a couple of seconds, but we were always on back of one another, even when I passed him. And Nunes was on the back of me, and it was literally a game of, who's going to go that little bit more further, try and gain a bit of time, and who's not going to be making the mistakes. And when I got past him, I was lucky that he made a mistake into the chicane and managed to pass. Bit tricky holding that position at first because there was a lot of traffic coming through at the same time, but then it was a case of just holding my line, keeping it tight, holding off the inside, stopping him from overtaking. As it's a tight track, really easy to defend on. And then it was just before I came into the pits when I was leading. Fortunate back marker came right into one of the hairpins, doored me out the way, gave me a bit of damage. And it was next lap, pitted in, lost a bit of time. Nunes got the lead again. And then it was down for Andrew to try and catch up. And we did manage to get back past him. But Andrew might be able to elaborate more on that second half.
Yeah, well, the second half was interesting to say the least. As Kieran said, we'd sort of surrendered the lead right at the end of the stint, getting bombed right at the end of Kieran's stint, and then I got absolutely hung out to dry on my outlap and the first flyer. Nunes nailed his stop and was 5, 6 seconds up the road after it settled. Then we got done again in traffic, which, as you said before, from the stream point of view, I'm sure it was incredibly entertaining, but for us, that was really, really difficult to manage. We managed to survive, and then fortunately for us, but really unfortunately for Nunes, he was then tangled up in an unfortunate crash, it must be said, that allowed us to take the lead back. But as we've said there before, it's not how you want to win. That was shaping up to be a properly good battle. And the good thing with racing Nunes, as you would have seen there in the first stint, is that you can trust him, you can run nose to tail, and there's no contact, there's no risk of anybody being fired off. It does allow for some really, really strong racing. It was just a shame that we didn't get to carry that on in the second stint, because looking at the lap times between me and him, it was quite tight, sort of trading times depending on the traffic, and I think that battle would probably have continued if we'd had the opportunity to do that. But we'll take the wins where we can get them. We did lose out last season under similar circumstances. It was going well for us, and we had a few issues similar to what Nunes has had here. So I guess it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? Certainly a workout tonight, at least.
Oh, most definitely. And I think you couldn't have put it better there, Andrew, with regards to that second stint, with regards to everything that happened. And, well, thank you both for clarifying exactly what happened on your in-lap before the pit stops. We wondered how that gap had opened up so much over the course of the pit stops, because looking at your pit time, it didn't look as though it had just naturally sort of opened up that way based on the pit stop. But that damage contributed significantly. And then, of course, the outlap and the first flying lap being compromised. But obviously, once you're in the lead, and, well, Nunes, of course, been relegated to P2. We thought he might be battling for P2, P3 at some point, but he held on to P2. Just take us through what it's like in your mind when you're out there, you're leading, you're comfortably leading, but of course you're having to play that juggling act of dealing with the GT3s coming through, the occasional M2 that's a lap or two down as well. What keeps you from essentially panicking in that scenario? What helps you maintain the sanity of the situation, if you will?
For me, once I know we're not fighting another car, I'm just watching the delta and making sure I can be as close as I can to it so that we're not surrendering time in case there's another incident. We can never be certain that it's not going to be us that gets fired off the next time around. And if it costs us 30 seconds, but I've been on pace, we still get away with it. So my eyes are predominantly on the mirrors once I know that we're not looking forward, making sure that we don't get caught out in the traffic. But I spend a lot of time just aiming for a lap time. I'm not an especially fast driver. I very rarely qualify a car, but I can find a lap time to hit and just stay on it. And that keeps me sort of nailed down to what I need to be doing. And knowing that we're not fighting means I can manage that a bit easier. It's harder to do that when we're in a fight, and that was probably how Nunes was caught out, because he was, I don't know if that was on stream or not when he was into the fence, but he was right on our tail. He was within a tenth, and there were 2 or 3 GT3s with us at the same time as well, and it was just an unfortunate scrape that can happen when you've got many things to think about. Certainly for me, once we're in clear air, it's just aiming for a lap time and making sure that I'm doing as much as I can to keep our advantage.
Oh, indeed. And we did catch the moment in particular we saw with Nunes being turned at the final corner and the incident that followed with that. And of course, we caught a couple of times where you guys were having to essentially play that role of navigating or letting safely through some of the GT3s who were diving through and trying to make their way up the road. But of course, making your way through in the end and bringing home the win come the checkered flag. A great feeling making it 2 out of 2. And now I have to ask, how are you guys feeling for Watkins Glen in 2 weeks' time?
Is it Watkins?
It is indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I've not turned a lap in this car at Watkins, but I love the track. So yeah, I look forward to that massively. I'm sure Kieran will as well. It's a favourite of both of ours, in fact, from other games, other series. So
Yeah.
it'd be nice.
My favourite track, I think, all round. I think in all games, very fast track. It's got all the corners, the quick chicanes, elevation, hairpins, enough room to pass cars as well. So it's good fun.
Well, we look forward to seeing you both take to the American circuit in 2 weeks' time. But just before we do let you go, is there anybody you guys would like to give a shout out to live on air tonight?
Yeah, to our second car. They've recently moved over to PC from racing on console, and getting used to the game on PC again, and putting in the effort, putting in a bit of practice before the rounds. And I think tonight was the best result of the season. So yeah, they've done a good job.
Yeah, good job by those boys. Also, Josh Killington for being too much of a chicken to enter this series as well. Probably deserves a shout. I'm sure he's listening.
I'm sure he'll appreciate that, but I'm sure the number 199 car of Anthony Schedler and also Mikael Jambu will really appreciate it, because they were running very strongly, particularly in the opening stage of the race, battling for that P3. Were you guys, I do have to ask just quickly on that, were you guys hoping it could be a TSRC P1, P3 come the end? Because they were looking good.
A bit nice, wouldn't it? But as Kieran said, they're both very new to it. So yeah, a result, finishing the race is one thing, and keeping themselves in the top 5 is a great achievement. Hopefully they can aim towards a podium for themselves, and it certainly would be nice to sort of put ourselves in a similar situation to Wild Things there and have more than one car on a podium. Something to aim at. We'll have a stern word with them for next week and tell them to pull their socks up a bit.
Oh, very good. Well, with that, gents, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us in the interview room. But once again, Andrew Pike, Kieran Sharp, congratulations on bringing the number 99 TSRC BMW M2 to the finish line, the winner of the class at Donington. And we look forward to seeing you take to the circuit once again in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, thanks. See ya.
Thanks a lot, man. In a bit.
All the best. So hearing there from our winners, of course, we heard firstly from Wild Things Racing Colex GG's Harry Phillips, our winner in the GT3 class, and then we were just hearing from Kieran Sharp and Andrew Pike of Team The Sim Racing Collective, or TSRC as it's abbreviated, in the 99 car, taking the win in the BMW M2 CS class. And two very distinct opinions on the race this evening, where we heard from our BMW M2 drivers about that need for survival given the way that they're having to continually navigate the GT3s going through, M2s are a lap or two down, and then a combination of that all coming together. And it's not the way they wanted to win, but as you heard there, they'll take the result. Of course, it was a battle between them and Rapid Drivers Club's Alex Nunes all the way through that first stint, and we were hoping for the continuation of that battle to the finish. It wasn't to be, but it has set the tone for a rivalry that I'm sure will be there at Watkins Glen International. And of course, our GT3 winner there, Harry Phillips, pressured on the opening stint by Patrick Sedaka, his teammate and rival, but in the end being able to run to the distance come the end. But speaking of the end, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to start to come to an end. Thank you very much for watching, and if you did enjoy tonight's broadcast, enjoyed the show, and want to know more about the Rapid Drivers Club community, then why not check us out at our official Twitter. That is twitter.com/Rapid Drivers Club. Alternatively, you could go to our link tree at what is linktr.ee/Rapid Drivers Club to find all of our links, our social media, our website, and everything in between, and find out more about what we do as a community for sim racing and outside of sim racing, and the series we do run within the sim racing world. Also, we just want to say a big thank you to our partners, of course, starting with Wild Things Racing, our sponsor for this series. Indeed, Wild Things Racing, the professional sim racing team, as founded and owned by Denise Pope, competing in both sprint and endurance races on a set of course of competizione at the Pro, Silver and Am levels. And you can go to their official Twitter, that is twitter.com/Wild Things Race, to find out more about them today. And also a thank you to our partner, the Sim Grid, for enabling us to host this series on their platform. And the Sim Grid is the place for amateur and professional sim racers to compete against fellow drivers in leagues and endurance events for a set of course of competizione, but also more recently expanding into the world of iRacing, R Factor 2, and also Formula 1 at 2022, unless I'm mistaken. And their link, of course, is www.thesimgrid.com. But it is the case now, our drivers and their teams will be packing up their bags and starting to make their way across the seas from the United Kingdom to the United States of America for Watkins Glen International, the revival place of road race in the United States. It's a fast, it's a furious, it's a highly cambered circuit, and well, our drivers will be looking to try and up it a notch in terms of being able to pull in the results, because in both the GT3 and the BMW M2 classes, the championship rivalries are on, and they're only going to intensify more at Watkins Glen in 2 weeks. We'll be back for more racing on Wednesday the 14th of September 2022. You will not want to miss it, because if it's anything like tonight, I'm sure there will be drama and battles in equal measure, and that's what the 2.4 World Tour is all about, the racing through and through. But until then, we have been Rapid Drivers Club. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit and the Spit. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.